Okay, thanks, Scott. Welcome everyone to this City Council special work session for November 1st, 2021. Is Ashley calling the roll?
I am. Scott?
Here.
Fritz?
Here.
Dora?
Here.
Cummins?
Here.
Netza?
Here. First item of business on their special work session is report on the Michigan Tax Tribunal, or an update from Josh Morgan.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. With the rise of 2020 cases here this year, we thought it might be appropriate to come in and talk to you a little bit about the Michigan Tax Tribunal, what it is, and some of the cases we've seen. So the MTT, what it is, it's a state-level quasi-judicial system for administering property tax appeals. It's divided into two divisions. The Small Claims Division, which primarily handles residential properties. Those cases are usually handled locally by the assessor himself. They're a much more informal hearing. The judge is typically an administrative law judge appointed by the state to hear those cases. They usually handle them in the county where the property is or the adjoining county. Most of the residential properties that we get, the hearings are actually held in Grand Rapids at the Grand Rapids Township Hall. Fortunately, with the real estate market the way it has been for residential properties, we've received almost no small claims residential hearings in several years here. The other side is what they call the entire tribunal. That is a more formal courtroom style setting. It typically involves attorneys representing both sides, also other expert witnesses such as appraisers. Property owners are more involved in those. You'll typically see those cases on larger properties like your commercial and industrial, hotels, restaurants, things like that. Once they have filed these cases, we go through a process that is called discovery. So that process is something where the petitioner and the assessor exchange data. What we're looking at there is to review the property and see if there are facts that maybe we're missing or facts that maybe they're missing in their case. The first point of review that we all go through is the factual data of the property. So that's going to be things like building size, age, the quality of the building, the condition of the building, the size of the land. You know, are these things accurately represented on the city's assessment roll? And is the petitioner accurately understanding how we're displaying them on the city's assessment roll? The second point that we review is the market data. So that's usually the most contentious point of a tribunal, where we will feel that some sales of property, some income, rents, expenses attributable to a property are the most indicative of a property's value, while they might have other sales that they think are most indicative. Once we've exchanged all those, we'll go to analyzing those, typically form our own separate opinions of value, and try to reconcile them at that point. If we're unable to reconcile them at that point, we'll typically move on to a equity test, where we're going to compare the equity of like property types throughout the city. So ensuring that all of the banks are assessed uniformly, all of the hotels are assessed uniformly. Usually if there's one that stands out amongst the others, there may be some sort of problem that we're not addressing. Finally, we'd like to go to a review of case law. Previous decisions of the tax tribunal can often guide us in helping to administer these cases. Knowing how they like to treat hotels or how they like to treat large format retail based on what other jurisdictions have gone through is often very valuable in guiding our decisions. So that is the basic breakdown of how we look at these cases from start to the review process. Probably the most important part is how many cases do we typically see here? Well, it's pretty typical in Grand Haven that we get about 3 cases per year on the average. The most cases that we've ever received was 18. That was in 2010. And the second most that we've received has been 11 cases during 2020. The 2020 cases, most of them we believe were due to COVID. Of course, with all of the shutdowns that have occurred, people were questioning the property values in commercial and real estate particularly. Residential real estate received 0 appeals last year. The residential market has been so strong. The commercial appeals have been really segregated to property types like hotels, restaurants, fitness centers, those types of properties that were affected by the shutdown the most and for the longest. Of those 2020 cases, we've had 9 that we've completed so far, and we have 2 that are still pending before the court. 3 of the completed cases, the Baymont Inn, the Harbor House Inn, the Family Video, they all appealed based on, again, COVID restrictions and believing that their property values may have been reduced. All 3 of them ended up withdrawing after being presented with data that supported our assessments. The Fifth Third Bank also withdrew based on market data provided. Their reasons for appealing, we don't believe were related to COVID at all, but they batch appeal most of their branches every 3 or so years, doing all of their branches within the state. I think a lot of commercial owners do that, trying to keep up with assessments and essentially making sure their assessor's paying attention to what's happening with the market value of those properties. 3 others, Applebee's, Automatic Spring, and Williamsburg Apartments, all provided data where we agreed that a minor reduction was in order. Typically, when we're reviewing these or when we're initially setting an assessment, we're using what's called the cost approach to value. There are 2 other primary approaches to value, the income approach and the sales comparison approach. When we start to look at those other 2 and bring them into the mix, sometimes that can change our assessment some. Fortunately, again, they were minor reductions. Taking it out of the mass appraisal model and putting it into the single property appraisal model led to a little bit different conclusion of value. We had a mixed-use building, 212 South Harbor. That property we were unable to reconcile, and it did go to hearing. We provided data to the judge. The property's owner did as well. The judge came back in favor of the city's appraisal and actually raised that property's value beyond what it was on the assessment roll. The final case that we have dealt with so far was a vacant land over at Taylor and Beechtree. The new owner of that property filed an appeal, but he filed it past the filing deadline. The Michigan Tax Tribunal dismissed it straight away because it was not filed timely. The 2 others that we have pending before the court still are the Best Western Inn and the Planet Fitness. So both cases are in progress. We're in discussions with the both owners at this point. All said, for the 2020 appeals, the petitioners were claiming a 34.5% reduction that they believed would be reasonable based on the data that they were providing. After all of these cases have worked their way through, we found that 1.46% was the actual amount of reduction that was given to all of these property owners. So we've had very favorable results in working out these cases. That said, it does come at a cost. To work those out, we've had about $11,500 worth of both legal and expert witness fees at this point. We've been very fortunate in working out these cases that we've not had to move forward with procuring appraisals of these properties. The typical commercial appraisal starts at about $5,000 and goes up from there. The more intricate a property is, the more specialized its use, the more those costs go up. The dollar amount in lost taxes can be significant with these appeals. For 2020 only, there was about $145,000 worth of taxes being contested amongst all taxing jurisdictions. $25,700 of that's directly attributable to the city's operating budget. Those reductions, if given, persist until the property sells because of Michigan's capping laws. So the true cost of these appeals far outweighs the 1 year's possible reduction. So if I were to bring those previous numbers out by about a 15-year holding period on those properties and a rate of inflation of 2.5%, the true cost in taxes is over $3 million in total, with about $500,000 in total attributable to the city's operating budget. So, we find it very important that we get these cases figured out and we defend the values where they're defensible, rather than effectively giving them a reduction just to close the case. So far, we've received only 3 new appeals for 2021. We're hoping that with the COVID question being out of the picture a little bit, businesses are reopening, more market data has continued to compile throughout the shutdowns and all, that we're still looking at a very healthy real estate market in most sectors. And most people are not finding that there has been any real reduction to their property values. Hopefully with the continued real estate markets, residential is still seeing record increases day after day. We're going to keep those appeals at bay. We'll continue to monitor those property types, their values, continue to set assessments as reliably as we can given the market data that we have. I've included a full report in the agenda for tonight for anybody following at home. It goes a little bit more in-depth into some of these discussion points. If anybody would like to look that up and have a read, it can be a little bit dry, but it can be interesting as well to see what happens on that side. At that point, are there any questions that I can address for any of you on the handling of these cases?
Well, it sounds like you are pretty accurate in your work if there's so few are contested, and then most of those are either settled or withdrawn, so I'd say good work to that.
Well,
any questions for Josh?
No questions. No, I learned a lot with your write-up. You said it was dry. I thought it was actually kind of interesting, and I appreciate your presentation too. You hit the points really well, but really appreciate you also bringing it out over multiple years and how it really could have such a significant impact, and looks like you've done quite well for us, so thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to thank you as well, because having been through the residential one a couple of times, I'm sure you're not the most popular guy everybody likes to see coming, so appreciate the work that you do.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, nobody likes to see the assessor come around,
Nope.
but it's a very, very important part of what we do here in the city. So,
I appreciate it. Thank you.
thank you.
I just want to echo that. I just want to echo that and say thank you for you too, for all you do for us. I really do appreciate it, and I know you put a lot of work into it and a lot of effort. So again, thanks a lot for all you've done for the city over the years.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Pat, you had your hand in the air.
Yes, sir. I just, the numbers at the bottom of this chart, is that taxable value or?
Yes, sir. That's taxable
It is
value.
taxable value. 'Cause it looks like the petitioner claim of just under 10 million and the city's value of just under 15 million. Maybe you're around, 5 million to the good.
Sorry, sorry, Pat. Those are actually the market values.
Okay,
that
okay.
I'm looking at
Okay.
it. So,
All right, I thought you were being modest.
yes, no, sorry. As
Well,
I look
but-
back on that, I did provide that in market value claim. So,
Even so, the calculus that Amy does, and when we talk about this, we look at that payback, the 25,700 in 1 year, and as Josh mentioned, he spent 11,500 to defend this. I'd like to point out that you guys are the last bastion of hope for the schools, for the county, for the library, the museum. They're not there spending money to fight these. We are. And you have to make that decision. So each time we look at the budget and decide, what's the payback to the city, but more importantly, what's that bigger number? Because that's for everybody, that 145,000 a year. So really, your taxpayers invested $11,000 to defend these values, preserving 150,000 a year for many years going forward for all of those taxing authorities. So it's really a profound impact on not just our revenue stream, but all those other taxing authorities, Harbor Transit, the library, the museum, all of them, the Commission on Aging. So I guess we all owe a debt of gratitude to Josh and the hard work he and Amy do to hold up their end of the deal. And this is really a spectacular graph. And if anybody was going to look at anything in this, I'd say, go through that. And as you guys pointed out, all of them dismissed or withdrawn, except one that was heard. And the one that was heard, the value actually went up about 30% plus. So good for Josh.
Yeah, one thing I would piggyback on that too, Pat, the 1% administration fee that the city is able to levy along with the tax bills is to go for collection of taxes, providing for assessments, and the defense of appeals too. So other taxing jurisdictions do not get to levy an administration fee. That helps to cover the cost of the cities defending these appeals.
Yeah, and I guess I'd also like to point out that when we set our budget each year and we're trying to anticipate our taxable value and our tax revenue, some of this stuff comes into play. We have to anticipate whether or not we're going to lose some of these cases, and so sometimes we have to budget a little low on our revenue, then it turns out to be okay. So sometimes it's a little hard to predict, but we're glad that you're out there defending it for us.
Yeah, the one fortunate thing I will say about that is typically the state process is slow enough that we already know how many cases we have on the books and what cases those are going to be, so that Amy and I can make a much more informed decision about what cases we have coming up, what might settle, what might be problematic. But
Okay. Anything else?
Oh, thank you.
No, thank you very much. Appreciate all the hard work you do and looking out for us.
perfect. Thank you very much for your time tonight.
Next, we have a stormwater permit status from Derek Gatos.
Good evening, Your Honor, Council. Derek Gatos, Public Works Director for the city. You may have remember this presentation from June. I'm giving it to you again just so we refresh all our memories, because there actually has been some updates since June I'd like to cover with you, and to prepare the council for the ordinance update coming in planned in December. Just some definitions when we talk about this. The MS4, or the municipal separate storm sewer system. It's not how we started our systems here in Grand Haven, or like most cities didn't. They were combined systems with sanitary. But over the years, with the creation of the EPA and regulations to clean up our environment, MS4 is a common acronym we use for our stormwater discharge and permitting system, which is changing. Elk Grove is the Lower Grand River Organization of Watersheds. They're the ones that help us. We contract with them along with 22 other agencies. Most of them are governmental. Some of them are schools that we partnered with as we affect the Lower Grand River. The one notable that's not a part of Elk Grove, you would think they would be, is Ottawa County Road Commission, and they're actually part of the Macatawa watershed. It was probably just a split decision they made a long time ago. They still are a part of what we do here in the Grand River as well. But they went to Holland. So history, I mean, dates all the way back to 2003 from our last ordinance to update. When I got here in 2016, this new revision was well underway with Elk Grove negotiating with Eagle. And they did this all throughout the state, so this isn't anything new here. Every watershed got the permitting system was changing to be more inclusive of different designs and with more protections. So, but it's just been a long time. There are some people that are already operating under this new permit system and these new regulations. I'll get to that in a little bit. But anyways, October 1st was when our permit was issued. And we're not going to be able to follow that until we're required to pass a new ordinance within 6 months. So within 6 months we'll pass it. But the plan is to pass that in December, and it'll be implemented in January 9th, I believe. But our permit was finally issued. They're getting to some of the smaller communities. Ottawa County and Kent County were issued last year, so there's already developers and engineers using the same model. What's new? Well, lots of different standards. If you go to the Elk Grove website and you pick on, you just type in City of Grand Haven, it'll bring you to our own page where it has all of the documents, the current documents, our current ordinances. They don't have the proposed one. We have that actually in Ron's office at the moment, reviewing it for inclusion in our ordinance. It's only 30 pages, so it'd be a nice read for you guys coming up here in December. But anyways, the ordinance and the documents you'll find in Elk Grove are again all the same for the communities. We all have there's a couple changes or the way that they're blended into each community. So, but in general, they're all tackling the same stormwater water quality with the same techniques. But you can find ours there. So permit was issued on October 1st. I told you in June that we'd reach out to community members, either and do some open houses. We'll specifically invite engineers that we've seen routinely do development in our city, so they're aware of these. Again, a lot of this isn't new because they're already doing it throughout the county. But we'll have one on November 29th at the community center. And then the first reading of the ordinance will come, as planned, December 6th. And then we'll have a second one, open house at the community center again on the 16th. And then the final reading will be on the 20th for implementation on January 9th of next year. So Spring Lake Village was just issued. Their permit schedule issued today, actually. I didn't get a chance to check on that. Ferrisburg was issued October 1st with ours. Fruitport Village, I couldn't get an update on that, but the Ottawa County Water Resource and the road commissions were done again last year. So that's the website. You can again go to that website. Just type in City of Grand Haven, and it'll bring us to our page. So in December, you'll see that ordinance come through. I believe Ron will crack that out of his office soon, and we'll get that draft to you as soon as possible. So, do you have any questions?
Questions for Derek? So Derek, when you have a community open house, this is on the ordinance language,
Mm-hmm.
what would the community expect to see in that open house? How would they prepare for this meeting?
Well, the open house, I want to try to educate them on the new ordinance. So we should have the actual language in there. We'll have all the tools. There's hundreds of pages of guidance documents on how to construct and what type of engineering goes into the stormwater management, and it really opens it up to rain gardens and all that stuff to where we can mitigate our impact in our environment through a lot of different ways. So all these guidance documents will be a part of that, and Elk Grove should be there as well to help us again hit the high points, but you also talk about specifics.
Okay, so then people might walk out of this meeting not just understanding the ordinance, but options they might have for everyday use.
That's correct. Yep.
Very good. Anything else from anyone?
Good.
No?
Okay, thank you.
Anything from Pat? Usually you wave your arms.
Well, yeah, I usually do, and I just, really both of these items tonight are just items that came across my desk, and I talked to these guys and thought, we could really use a little update at City Council. Don't want you to feel blindsided when this ordinance arrives in front of you in December, so you've got some time to think about it. It is a significant change in the way we do things, and I'm hoping that these periodic updates, along with the town hall style meetings, bring out the architects, the developers, the investors, the property owners, so they don't get surprised in 2022 when they come in and they have to abide by somewhat more rigid stormwater standards that are going to be consistent across our whole region. So I thought, getting that to you and explaining that and giving you a chance to digest this 30-some pages of legislation that you'll be thinking about in December was worthwhile, as well as the tax tribunal update that you heard a few minutes before. We don't get that very often. I think in both cases, in our stormwater management, Derek Gatos brings with him a career's worth of hands-on experience in our area with regulating stormwater issues. And then Josh Morgan, who you heard from earlier. Oh, good, he's still here, so he can hear me saying nice things about him. Just recently got an upgrade in his assessor status, I believe. So he's at the top of the class now. He's the best there is. We contract with Ottawa County to provide the assessor services, and it's efficient, and as you saw a few minutes ago, very, very effective. So I just wanted to give you guys basic updates and fill some airtime for WAWL. But I think Eric might have enough time left to play some classic rock before your 7:30 meeting.
That may very well be. Well, thank you, Derek.
All right,
Appreciate
welcome.
the information.
Thank you.
And at this point, it's 7:25, I'm going to adjourn the work session, and we will, in 5 minutes, we will take up our regular session. So don't go away. It's 2021. Ashley, would you call the roll?
Dora,
Here.
Cummins,
Here.
Scott,
Here?
Fritz,
Here.
Manetza.
Here. Our invocation this evening is by Major William Holman of the Grand Haven Salvation Army. Please rise, and after the invocation, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we just come into your presence right now, and as this meeting continues on, we just pray for your direction, for your guidance, and for your Spirit to be upon each individual decision. We pray that in everything, the decisions that are made this day would be made in your perfect will. May we be guided by your Spirit, and we give you praise. And this we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, next on our agenda, we have a couple of new appointments.
This is to appoint Todd Hancock to the MSDDA with a term ending June 30, 2025, and Tyler Berg to the Zoning Board of Appeals with a term ending June 30, 2023.
Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Fritz, second by Scott. Are there any questions on either of these appointments or applications? If not, would you call the roll?
Cummins,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Fritz,
Yes.
Dora,
Yes.
Manetza.
Yes. Now, since our clerk is not here, we're not swearing in tonight?
Correct. They have been made aware that they'd have to come in to be sworn in.
Okay, well, I see Todd out there. Thanks for coming. And I'm not sure if Tyler is here or not, but in any event, make arrangements with clerk's office to get sworn into office. So thank you for stepping up, appreciate it. Okay, now we have no other presentations this evening, correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
Okay. So we are to the approval of the consent and regular agendas. Are there any changes on the agendas?
I would like to take D off and put that under the regular agenda.
So that would be the
D,
reaffirmation of the 2018 Affordable Housing Task Force,
yes.
and that will become item E. That'll become item 13E. Any other changes?
I have a question on item H. I can either ask it now or we can move it, whichever, doesn't matter to me.
H under the consent agenda?
Yes,
You got the same question, huh?
maybe. We had a
Um,
presentation a while back from Derek regarding,
Plastic?
yeah, going to maybe plastic instead of copper, but I see we're still requesting copper.
We can either do that,
Well, if you want to,
you want to remove it, we can move it, then we can
yes,
discuss it.
if you want to potentially do something other than just a blanket,
Yeah, that's fine.
um,
We can move it.
a blanket approval would be consent agenda. If you want to do something else, then let's move it.
You want to discuss
Move
it, remove it then,
Okay, then this will become item
okay.
13F. Anything else? Anything from you, Pat?
You got it.
Okay. So then I would need a motion to approve the agendas as modified this evening.
So moved.
Second?
Okay, motion by Dora, second by Fritz. Would you please call the roll?
Scott,
Yes.
Fritz,
Yes.
Dora,
Yes.
Cummins,
Yes.
Manetza.
Yes. So that brings us to our call to the audience. This is the first of two opportunities. At this time, members of the audience may address council on any item, whether on the agenda or not. Those addressing council are asked to provide their name and address. Will be limited to 3 minutes of speaking time. Council will hear all comments for future consideration, but will not have a response at this time. So who would like to address council?
Good evening, gentlemen. My name's Todd Crum. I live at 415 Sandpiper. I'm here tonight to request you table the buy-sell agreement that is on your agenda. It is clear to me that the BOP and the city are not on the same page with the sale. As elected officials, we need to follow the rules, and in this case, it's section 16.5 of the city charter. I want to point out that the only vote taken by the BLP board on the sale of the diesel plant was turned down by city council. The BLP has not voted on any other sale of this property. This means that we have not sought out your approval on any other sale. These are the facts. Before we jump into an agreement with a third party, we need for us to be on the same page. We need to work together on this. Stick to the rules of the city charter, table tonight's vote, and let's follow the proper process. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jerry McCaleb, 1235 Slayton. And I want to address the affordable housing issue that was moved to the regular agenda, because my name's on this. I was part of the committee, the original Affordable Housing Committee. And the reason I was so interested in being a part of it is I am interested in affordable housing in Grand Haven, the difficulties of affordable housing in Grand Haven. And I wanted to help steer and guide that, because I'm very concerned about the keeping our community intact and keeping the flavor of it as it is now. And it's, the whole thing of it wasn't affordable housing, or if you wanted more affordable housing, whatever you want to call it, it isn't just housing costs, it's also wage costs. And I think we spend a whole lot more time talking about, how to adjust housing costs than what do we do with wage costs. So when I look at the three basic ideals that we set forth, which we agreed to, we didn't write, but we agreed to. Everyone who works in Grand Haven should be able to live in Grand Haven. And I remember when that came up, I thought, well, what an ideal thing is that to say? Unrealistic, but an ideal. So, and that is why it's called a basic ideal. Doesn't have to be realistic, you just have to write it down. And part of the question is, does everybody that works here want to live here? And I don't think so. As I talk to people that come in, they go, would you want to live in Grand Haven? No. Grand Haven doesn't always have. Sometimes people think Grand Haven is a snooty town. I'm not sure if that's true. I don't think so, but people have that. I've got to watch my time. Is it up here anywhere? But anyway, so the other two, Grand Haven should have a variety of housing options, absolutely. Those who live in Grand Haven should be able to remain in Grand Haven as they age, absolutely. The first one is the one I have the biggest issue with. And when I hear some of the things that are being proposed, I know the things that we even talked about, the small houses, or cutting lots up and being able to, making them smaller, being able to put 3 or 4 houses on what is now one large piece of property. In some of our most historic and beautiful neighborhoods, I think would be a really bad thing to do to our city. And so I just want to leave those comments with you, that whatever changes that you make, you do it with great caution. And remember what Grand Haven is, and not to destroy some of the most beautiful neighborhoods that we have. So I'm very concerned about some of these directions that are being taken, making lots smaller instead of bigger, and making it more dense, because I don't think that behooves a neighborhood or families or quality of life. So I just want to leave you with that. Just be careful at how you go about doing this. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Good work.
Perfect timing. You must have practiced. Who else would like to address council? if no one's coming forward, there will be a second opportunity to address council at the end of the meeting, but sometimes it's better if you have something to say it earlier in the meeting rather than at the end when we're done deliberating things. So, would anyone else care to come forward at this point in time? If not, we will move along. So, next we'll move to our consent agenda. So, Ashley, would you like to read that?
This is to approve the minutes for the special work session and regular meeting of October 18th and special joint council Duncan Park Board meeting in closed session of October 19th, 2021, to approve the bills memo in the amount of $708,290.97, to approve an application from the Grand Haven Elks for a social district permit contiguous to the common areas designated by the council and pursuant to MCL 436.1551 for consideration for approval by the Michigan Liquor Control Commission, to allow the Neighborhood Housing Department to apply for Round 7 of the Neighborhood Enhancement Program grant, to extend the ongoing agreement between the City of Grand Haven and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Grand Haven office for the placement of cameras on the northwest corner of the building, and authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute the necessary documents, to approve the submission of a 2022 Michigan Lighthouse Assistance Program grant to complete concrete restoration work around the south entrance light in the amount of $60,000 with a $48,000 match to be reimbursed by the Grand Haven Lighthouse Conservancy Fund held at the Grand Haven Community Foundation, and authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute the necessary documents, to release and discharge special assessments established pursuant to special assessment agreements signed and recorded at the Ottawa County Register of Deeds in 2006, 2007, and 2010 on the property commonly known as the Haven at Grand Landing, and authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute the necessary documents, and to approve a contract with Wolverine Fireworks in the amount of $2,400 for the 2021 New Year's Eve fireworks show, and authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute the necessary documents.
I could use a motion.
So moved.
Second?
Motion by Fritz, second by Cummins. Question on any items on the consent agenda?
Maybe for the people at home, Pat, could you kind of explain the release and discharge of special assessments that we have? Kind of give it kind of a little small picture so people understand what's going on here.
Sure, I would like to do that if I could have a moment, Mayor.
Yes.
The Grand Landing project came along with a considerable special assessment on all the properties up there to pay the costs of the bonds if we didn't get enough tax increment, which is new property taxes, to pay off the bonds we used to build the sewer and the water and do the due care cleanup and all of those things that we did out there. Ultimately, we did not have to levy those assessments. We were able to plan for it ahead of time, and now we've retired that Grand Landing debt, and there's no longer a need for the special assessments, so you're able to discharge them. Attorney Ron Bolche has looked over the instrument that's been presented to you tonight, and he approves it as to form. And this will do away with those special assessments and allow the owner, I understand, is selling the apartments north of Adams and needed this to be discharged in order for that sale to close.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And this is not just the apartments, but the entire development?
Everything north of Adams is covered under this particular release.
Okay. Other questions, comments? Would you call the roll?
Fritz,
Yes.
Dora,
Yes.
Cummins,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes?
Manetza.
Yes. All right, that brings us to our first public hearing this evening. I'll open a public hearing concerning the recommendation of the United States Army Corps of Engineers that dredge materials from 2022 outer harbor dredging be deposited into deeper waters in Lake Michigan and not placed on beaches on the shore of Lake Michigan. So if anyone would like to address council on this item, specifically about the dredging and the potential beach nourishment for 2022, please come forward and address council.
Good evening. My name's Austin Knoll. I live at 19715 North Shore Drive. So I'm between a third and a half a mile north of the pier. I am in favor of having the dredging brought up onto our beaches. We've lost a tremendous amount of property here in the 8 years that we've lived here. And I think, to keep it simple, this is a great way to kill two birds with one stone. You need to do the dredging. We need safety for our homes. So thank you very much and appreciate your consideration.
Okay, thank you.
My name is William Burrows. I live at 19653 North Shore Road. I have been coming here since 1983 at that property, and I've seen a lot of changes. One of the things concerns me about letting the dredge material go onto the beach is not only the mussel shells, but we also get river silt that comes down the Grand River. We really don't want, or at least I don't want, on the beach. And I think maybe the silt should be, the whole dredging should be dumped at least 30 feet deep out into the lakes so the waves don't wash it back up on the beach. So if we're talking about clam shells or mussel shells, we're also going to get river silt. And I don't want river silt on my sandy beach. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
My name is Ron Schofield. I live at 20045 Breton. About 15 years ago, a lot of this dredging was brought up onto my beach, and it was a mess. A lot of zebra mussels, there were rusted tin cans and other kinds of refuse, and I'm against putting any more sand on my beach.
Thank you. Actually, we did have correspondence on this. Do you have a summary of that or a list?
I do not offhand.
If you scroll down, they're located in the packet.
Under correspondence?
I know it would have been as part of this agenda item.
Okay.
Yeah, right there. Keep going.
Keep going. Right there.
And there's one. I think there were 3 or 4 received. That one from Steve Olson. Does not want it on the beach. He's at 20031 Breton. I'm gonna keep going. And the next one is from Don Bohe, and he is also not supportive of placing the dredge material on the beach. Nancy and Don Armach. That's 19947 Breton. Do not want it on the beach, want it either south of the state park or into Lake Michigan. And I guess we got that one twice, sorry about that. So that was it, those 3.
All right, thank you. Anyone else from the audience care to address council? If not, then I will close the public hearing. And council will now discuss. I will need a motion. Ashley, would you like to read this resolution?
Yes. This is to approve a recommendation to the United States Army Corps of Engineers that dredge materials from 2022 Outer Harbor dredging be deposited into deeper waters of Lake Michigan and not placed on beaches on the shores of Lake Michigan. Administration recommends approval.
Need a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Dora.
Second.
Second by Cummins. I see that there are little bags of sand up here at our places. Yes, sir.
I did want to explain that, Your Honor. I went out and got, the pictures that Ashley had up a moment ago make it look very dramatic with the shells, if we want to get back to that. But that's where the wind has actually blown over that sand and, left the shells behind. So I actually went up to the areas where we did have the dredge materials and just dug into that sand and got one of those 2 bags. And then the other bag was from another area that's clean beach sand. I'm not going to tell you which is which right off the bat, but if you want to look at those and see if you can tell the difference between the two, it's not as dramatic as it might look. You look in there, you'll find a few shells. It's not quite pure shells like it looks like there. That's where all the fine sand is blown off, but you dig right below that and it becomes less prevalent. But the one with a little black mark on it is the area where the dredge spoils were dumped, and the one without the black mark is the clean beach sand. So I just wanted to give you a real piece of the beach, and I do need those bags back because I did not get a permit from Eagle to remove that sand, so I'm going to need to bring it back down and redeposit it tomorrow.
Okay, make sure you do.
Yes, sir. Just wanted to get that to you and then, give you a chance to see it firsthand.
All right, thank you. And yes, you're correct, there's not a dramatic difference. It's been stated that the texture of the sand is a little coarser from the dredging spoils. Not obvious from these 2 bags, but I have seen the shells down there, and those are pretty noticeable. And also, my understanding is, I think Derek is still here. Derek had made a comment to council in separate report that you didn't see a lot of benefit from beach nourishment. Would you care to elaborate on that?
Well, yeah, I talked this over with Pat and our crews. There's a lot of sand that migrates up through the lakes, through the lake and through the, just in the natural environment there. Putting this stuff on there, just, again, we've seen complaints. I've gotten complaints about the state park this year because of the shells, and I'm like, well, sorry, we don't oversee that. But yeah, there's plenty of beach there for the city. It's obviously not as much as what the state park now has, but they also have not got to contend with these shells at times too. So I think we're good where we're at.
So from the perspective of the city's not interested in putting this on city beach?
No, we talked about, if we did and we didn't like it, how do you mitigate it? And there really isn't a way to do it. It'd take a lot of effort to continuously scrape those off as they turn up. All that area that they put the spoils on is all filled with it, and it's just going to rise to the top over the course of time. So it'd be an ongoing battle to get rid of it if we so chose to do that.
Okay.
All I can say is we have such a pristine beach, and through the years, if you remember here, the old saying, the singing sands of Lake Michigan was always in Grand Haven. When you scuff your feet across it, you could hear the kind of whistling noise underneath your feet, especially as I was growing up. I always do remember that. And having all these shells on there, it kind of deteriorates the area we have down there. I'm not in favor of putting any more of that out there for it. I just like to keep our beach nice and clean. It was bad enough when we had the state park when they used to dump their asphalt out there when they shoved it, So this is, I like to keep nice clean sand. I think that's what our tourists and the people that live here would like to see too.
Any other comments by council?
I guess as being one of the people that typically volunteers to go out and help clean the beach up and pick up all this stuff that we find in this bag, I kind of would not want to see it go there as well. So putting it out in deeper water is fine with me.
I mixed feelings about this because I remember back about 1980, 81, when we almost lost Grand Avenue and we had to put rocks in there. We filled them with rocks and torpedo sand. So the beach probably from just south of Grand to probably about halfway to Belmar is probably more torpedo sand than it is regular sand, but I don't like the looks of this. I thought I didn't think there would be that dramatic of a deal putting them on the beach, but it does look pretty kind of gross actually up at what we're seeing from the film. So, but so, but anyways, I don't have a problem with putting them out of the lake either, but it's, like I said, I just remember, the time when we almost lost Grand Avenue and it came pretty close, so it's kinda nice to have that fill there, I mean, but I don't know, you know, but again, I can understand why people wouldn't want to put it out there, I guess.
Brian, anything?
No, I think I see it a couple different ways. I would hope that, you know, our state park system would care about our beaches as well and wouldn't want to put something that's, you know, overly harmful or destructive to folks who want to go to the beach or visit our state parks and travel here to enjoy them. I mean, it's true. Our beaches are definitely different. You know, you go down to, you know, the ocean and you have all kinds of shells and everything else you're contending with, and that's not necessarily fun to walk on either. So we are pretty lucky to have the kind of, you know, the sugar sands that we do here. You know, I can kind of, you know, see Denny's point. You know, I'd hate to have the water levels go back up dramatically all of a sudden and then just keep eroding what we have. Whereas, you know, if we were to have this, even though that would erode away relatively quickly in probably a 2 or 3 year period, at least that's some level of protection versus just continuing to take what we have there as well. So I can see it both ways. I'm not like, hey, one way or another. So I'm sure we'll be dredging some more. Now, they may not offer this to us again either. I don't. So.
Okay. Pat, you have your hand up.
I just wanted to point out that the Army Corps did make it clear that this is just advisory. They're probably going to do what they're going to do. But they would like your opinion because they have various options that are cost neutral for them. So if it's, we'd like it on the north, we'd like it on the south, we'd like it in the lake, they'd just like to know what your feeling is. So, and I don't know if the state park did public hearings to see what the public felt about it. They did also get with me and say it's likely they could get more hose this year and maybe go up to 8,000 feet away, which means they might be able to get it up to the county park up in Ferrysburg. So they are checking with Ferrysburg as well.
Yeah, and I think we understood that the Corps isn't subject to our direction, but it's good that they ask, because if we don't speak up, then we'll get whatever we get. At least we will have expressed ourselves. You know, I look at it as, and yeah, I guess the other thing is the Corps said that putting this in deeper waters of the lake is actually an option.
Yes.
Okay, because I recall when I was on the Environment and Natural Resource Commission that this came up several years ago. In fact, Denny and I both served on that at the same time. And the preference at that time was to put it out in the lake, and we said, no, bring it on shore and nourish our beaches. At that time we wanted it. Now we have reservations about it. So I was certain that they would be willing to put it out there. I guess as far as, and I think Derek alluded to this a little bit as well, there's a natural redistribution of sand that takes place continuously. So you can put it there and it'll eventually even itself out, put it back in a natural location, whether we intend for that to happen or not. So it's a temporary measure. It's something that would be helpful for a time. Eventually it would be back to the natural shoreline that we've had seen and mapped out for generations. So I guess considering the material that's on the state park and the negative reaction to it, like I say, I don't really see a lot of difference in these. So as far as the texture of the sand, I'm not sure it's that meaningful, but I guess I would vote in favor of putting it out in deeper waters at this time, until such time as Denny has alluded to, we have a desperate need for beach nourishment to preserve our streets. So I would tend to side with everyone else who has said, let's put it out in the lake. Other questions or comments? What advice shall we give to the Corps? The motion is to put it on deeper waters. Aisha, would you please call the roll?
Dora?
Yes.
Cummins?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes?
Fritz?
Yes.
Manetza?
Yes. Thank you. All right. Now we have another public hearing concerning the vacating of a portion of Waverly Avenue, right-of-way between the railroad tracks and 816 Waverly Avenue, just west of Verhoek Street, pursuant to Chapter 32, Article 4 of the Code of Ordinances. So at this point, I will open the public hearing. Anyone who would like to address council on this vacation request, please come forward. If the applicant is here and would like to say something, they may also come forward.
Denny Dryer, 220 and a half Washington. We are requesting the vacating of the easement or the right-of-way, and we will grant the city full easement down that new shared driveway that we're planning on. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, thank you. Anyone from the public would care to address council on this item? Seeing none, I will close this public hearing. We'll move on to next item, which is a resolution. Would you please read that?
This is to approve an introductory resolution vacating a portion of Waverly Avenue right-of-way between the railroad tracks and 816 Waverly Avenue, just west of Verhoek Street, pursuant to Grand Haven Code of Ordinances, Chapter 32, Article 4. The Planning Commission and Administration recommend approval.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Or,
Motion by Fritz, second by Scott. Questions on the motion? Comments?
The question I have is, in the report, and we talked about this previously, and then he just mentioned it, if the owner would ever sell the land, it says if the owner would ever sell the land, currently within the right-of-way, the city would receive the proceeds from the sale. This condition, along with the water main easement, would be part of the vacation approval if City Council ultimately decides to vacate the right-of-way. So do we need in this introductory resolution that we would receive any future proceeds if there were a sale? Or is that going to be a part of an easement agreement? Or at what point do we make sure that that's clear, that that's our intent and what we are agreeing to?
Well, my understanding would be we would have a recordable document to demonstrate the city council's action, and in that document, we could set forth any of those conditions. I would have to check with the city attorney to verify that.
Well, good thing he's
but I think
close
that
by.
would be the time and device we would use.
We can certainly add conditions to the document that's recorded.
Those should be added at this time.
Yes, if that's the intent. Otherwise, we would need that authority in order to require the additional language.
Okay. So Ryan, are you proposing to amend the resolution?
Yeah, I would amend it and add that, if the owner were to ever sell the land currently within the right-of-way, the city would receive the proceeds from the sale, and that that we would seek a water main easement as well.
Okay. Any second for that?
Second.
Okay.
Clear, Mr. City Attorney? Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yes.
I think so, and either Ashley or Pat is recording what the amendment is. Are there any further amendments to the motion? We would need to vote on the amendment before we can vote on the motion. So, if there are no questions on the amendment, would you please call the roll?
Do you want to ask the applicant, maybe? Should we or not?
We can ask, but if he wants his approval.
Okay.
Would the applicant like to comment on our amended motion?
I'm not certain I understand. You want,
If you sell the property, basically, a portion of that would go back to the city because we're giving you the easement to it, we're giving you the property. We're vacating it.
the agreement between 815 and Steadfast is that we will put the road in for our share of the 16 and a half feet. So they are not expending money for the road. We are doing it, but we will share it.
But you're not going to be the owner of the vacated property.
No. Well, yes, we will be the owner of 16 and a half feet of the vacated property.
I don't know who all the parties are.
Is that how this is being split?
The right-of-way is 33.
I understand, but the right-of-way is originally 66, and it appears to have been vacated at one point halfway.
No, when 815 was built, Waverly was not a street. When 815 was platted, it wasn't, and then they platted that later for the Grand Haven High School plat, and they extended the right-of-way beyond 815 to the railroad tracks, but they only had 33 feet.
Okay, so you're saying it was
The
never.
property east of 815 was developed as a 66-foot right-of-way. But 815 Verhooks is on Verhooks.
Okay,
Was platted previous.
okay, it appeared to us that it was, half of it had been vacated previously. You're saying that never happened?
No, it was never
Yeah.
right-of-way.
Jennifer behind you is shaking her head, nodding her head.
Jennifer Howland, Community Development Manager. There wasn't any right-of-way north of the existing 33 feet. They're in two separate plats, as Denny was describing. So vacating this 33 feet, the full amount would go to Blue Agate. It wouldn't be a split in half like we normally see, where 33 feet would go to the north and 33 to the south. So the full amount goes to Blue Agate, and if they choose to sell some of it to 815 Verhooks LLC, that's their choice, but that's why we have that condition in there that we would receive the proceeds as the city if there was a sale.
Okay.
So contrary to what Mr. Dryer said, it's not a half and half split. The entire vacation goes to the south.
Correct. And then Blue Agate could sell some land to 815 in the future. Or if they have an arrangement where it sounds like they have this shared driveway that they're both going to benefit from, it'll run through this right-of-way today, some to the south for future development, some to the north for an approved development.
But that would be
I don't know if there's money exchanging, but there's value there.
Yeah, but that's a separate transaction from what we're doing tonight.
That's correct. The full amount will go to Blue Agate.
Okay, so then the amendment that Ryan has offered, based on the write-up we have, as far as proceeds of a sale coming back to the city, that would be from if Blue Agate sold any portion of it,
Right, sometime in the future, and we don't know what
Okay.
that arrangement would be.
which would only indirectly affect Mr. Dryer.
Right. The both parties' intention is to do what you see in the exhibit, which is to put in a shared driveway where they would both benefit.
Okay.
The ownership of that land is immaterial to the development of the property in the city's eyes, from a zoning perspective.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
With the water main running down pretty close to the middle of the 33 feet, it's really difficult to use any of that land anyway. So we will be putting in a shared driveway that will basically be 24 feet wide across the middle of the 33 feet. So the water main gets a little closer to the northwest corner, but we will remain, our buildings on 815 will remain at least 10 feet away. So, any other questions, be happy to answer them.
No, the only reason that we asked you back was because the amendment had to do with potential sale of the property. I don't think that's not directly something you're worried about.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Mike, did you have anything else?
No, I just wanted to make sure that they understood what we were talking about.
Okay. Shall we vote on the amendment?
Isn't that already in the, what we were asking anyways, about the sale and that?
That may be, but based on the conversation between the city attorney and city manager, it sounded like we need to include conditions if we want them to apply, which is why we're doing this.
Redundant, okay.
Ashley?
Cummins?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Fritz?
Reluctant, yes.
Dora?
Yes.
Manetza?
Yes. Now we get to vote again on the amended motion. Any questions?
I'm good. I support it as, I believe it'll create an opportunity for the use of some otherwise vacant property that sits there, so.
All right. Ashley?
Fritz?
Yes.
Dora?
Yes.
Cummins?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Manetza?
Yes. Congratulations. All right, brings us to our first item of new business.
This is to approve a buy-sell agreement with CL Lakewood to transfer ownership of the diesel plant property at a sale price of $1 million for the redevelopment of the property as a restaurant and event center and authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute the necessary documents. Administration recommends approval.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Fritz,
Second.
second by Dora. All right, this has been on our plate for quite some time now. Let's see. Pat, do you want to take the lead on this?
I'd be happy to just quickly present what's being asked tonight. Back in July of this year, I believe, July 19th to be precise, the city council voted following quite an extensive period of discussion and review and public engagement, a survey, a presentation at 4 other city commissions, and including the BLP, so that'd be 5 others. Lots of discussion about 4 proposals that were solicited by the BLP. And the BLP recommended, as you'll recall, I'm sure, one of those 4 proposals, the property be sold for that project. City council took that advice and noted it, and then proceeded with their own review of all of the proposals and sought public input and listened to their boards and commissions, and came back and voted contrary to the BLP recommendation to pursue a sale to a different proponent, that being the CL Lakewood team. They are here tonight on the Zoom meeting. We can put them up on the big screen if you do have any questions of them. At the July 19th meeting, after looking at all of this information, the City Council voted to pursue a buy-sell agreement with the CL Lakewood team to redevelop that property and preserve the building at a price of $1 million. And that was passed unanimously by City Council at that time in July. And you said, go ahead and get a buy-sell together. Now, this is one of a number of ways probably that you could pursue the sale of the property. Greg Holcomb is a consultant at Urban Innovations that BLP and the city retained to kind of walk us through this. He's been involved in many public-private partnerships and negotiating such deals, and his advice, along with the preferred approach of the developer and our own city attorney, was to set up a buy-sell agreement that would set up an intention of the city to sell the property to this developer, provided a number of contingencies, giving them a long due diligence period to pursue and answer a number of questions about the property, which will have a direct impact on whether or not the property or the project would be successful. So they've got a fairly extended due diligence period, I think of up to 8 months if they extend it. Yeah, so you know, that during that time they would work on and complete plans, which are somewhat costly to get all the detail together for a full submission to our planning commission to get that review process underway and done. They've not yet done that level of detailed work. To work on the environmental concerns, we just heard today at the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority that the Phase 2 testing is complete and they're waiting on the results so that they can come up with a due care plan and they can have a good idea of what that environmental cost is going to be and start working on whether or not they're going to get any support from the state of Michigan or others to help work on that due care, the environmental costs. There are some other contingencies that are listed in your report. Greg is here tonight. He might want to say a few words about what we've gone through over the last, since July. It has been a very thorough process. Ron has been involved at several steps. Greg's been involved, Jennifer and myself. We've had multiple meetings with the development team, all 4 individuals that were, I think, previously introduced to you, and at least 2 of them are on the Zoom meeting tonight. So I don't know if you want to blow that up and bring those guys on, at least visually, Ashley, and Greg can go ahead and...
Yeah, Council, thank you for having me here tonight. Pat has covered it very well, and especially in the last 6 weeks or so, there have been several drafts of the buy-sell going back and forth. Ron has been instrumental in representing the city side in those discussions and I'd say really negotiations. And they came together last week to the point that we felt we're ready to move forward. There's a 4-month due diligence period. That's the initial 120 days. If they need more time, if we agree that it's okay to take more time, there's another 2-month period of time and then another 2-month period of time. Maybe the first thing that really reinforces what Pat just said. This is not an easy project. The mayor's been saying this all along. We've realized it when we went through the first process. The successful bid for the BLP was to take the building down. It's simpler, but that's even not easy. But to actually go in and rehabilitate, so the charge came back from you to try to rehabilitate it. We put the RFP or solicitation back on the street, received the proposals including the CL Lakewood, and they agreed with the conditions to save the building, rehabilitate the building, and meet the $1 million minimum bid, which has set off this process of trying to put the buy-sell agreement together, incorporating those conditions as well as other considerations like the environmental and so forth. So meeting the planning commission goals. Jennifer has also been instrumental in interacting with the CL Lakewood team, and again, they can make comments as well, but it's been a pretty rigorous process. We met literally 10 days after the July 19 your charge with the CL Lakewood team here at City Hall to get them all cranking. I did an initial buy-sell, very kind of crude planner level buy-sell, and then Ron really took over a few weeks after that to formalize it for your rules. So I'm happy to answer other questions, but that's the broad outline of what we've been doing.
Okay, thanks, Craig.
You're welcome.
I guess that comments or questions from City Council? Anyone?
Well, I can get started here, I guess, with a couple different pieces here. I'll say, I had this discussion with the mayor yesterday. We were hoping to have this back in September, which, would have been, I wouldn't have had a concern with the timeline. Then I'm a little concerned that we have this, so we have an election tomorrow, and we're lucky here in Grand Haven in some respects that we have our newly elected officials take office pretty much immediately next week, next Monday, and so I have concern. I mean, it's kind of as close to a, lame duck session almost that we can get. We're right at the end here. We have a buy-sell agreement, and the next council, and it may be us five, I don't know, but the next council is going to have to deal with, the conditions and the ramifications and that sort of thing. So I'd feel more comfortable simply postponing this for a couple weeks. If that's not the desire of the council, then obviously I have some other things that I think should be worked on in the meantime that I'm certainly willing to discuss, and so we can kind of work on those, because I'd like to see some stronger language in certain areas and have some questions on others. But I guess that's the first question I have for my fellow council members. Do we feel like it's appropriate today before an election to move forward with, a big discussion on the agreement? But.
Well, I'll just say I'm willing to move forward with it. The simple fact is we've had a lot of discussion, we've had a lot of input, public input. Why we want to slow it? I mean, just for one day, for another meeting. These people want to get moving, and we've already agreed that we want them a long time ago. It's not, you're right, it is coming up on election, but we still got to do business. That's what we're here for, to do our business. And these people are expecting us to move so they can move forward and start doing their due diligence also. So I'd like to keep moving forward with them. I don't think there's be any difference, myself personally. We've already stepped our 1 foot out already with these guys. We already made it, said we wanted them. Why would we slow them? Why would we do this? We had our lawyer look it over. He's writing the agreement. There's not going to be any changes.
That's, well.
I guess I heard from what Todd had to say, and it sounds like the Board of Light and Power want to weigh in on this. So, and like Ryan said too, we got new boards coming on here, so I don't have a problem postponing this vote and letting the Board of Light and Power weigh in on this. I don't, if I start a conflict between the Board of Light and Power and us over this, I don't, I think if they want a chance to weigh in on it, let them. And so I'm okay with postponing it.
What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, I kind of had the same concerns that Ryan had brought forward. Initially, CL Lakewood was taking a look at making a proposal to us from 30,000 feet in the air, and they were going to narrow that down once we said, yeah, we want to hear more, and here's kind of what we think. They were taking some time to look into it and see what they thought they could work out as far as what they could do, resolving some of the issues with parking that existed, and some other issues on the site. I kind of thought they were going to come back to us at some point in time with a proposal that says, here's what we're going to do, here's what we're going to propose to resolve some of the issues that are outstanding, and give a presentation, preferably at a work session where some of the community could attend and kind of see what all was going on and how they thought they could resolve some of the issues that seemed to be brought up. So that's kind of was my take. So when it came up, I was surprised to see it, but I understand what they were looking to do. I've also received a lot of emails back and forth from BLP board members. I've seen some from between Dave and Pat that have gone back and forth, and Ron's opinion of whether we can or we can't sell the property without their approval. I would prefer to work with them and on the sale instead of to just say, well, sorry, we're not going to listen to what you have to say and do it anyway. I kind of would also like to see it go before the Planning Commission so that they have a chance to take a look at what this proposal is all about and what they think will work or won't work once it's finally developed a little bit. So I'm kind of with you, Denny, and I don't have an issue with putting this off for a meeting or two until that can all happen.
Well, I disagree. I think that we have been immersed in this issue for a long time. We've seen all the details of all the issues that have come forward as far as the authority to sell, the role of the BLP, the role that the BLP had, the actions the council has taken, the additional public input, respecting the sentiment of the community and attempting to adaptively reuse this building. I think all those things have been something that this council has been working on for a long time, and would be, if there are new council members after the election, they would have to come back up to speed on all these same issues, and I don't see that a lot of things are different going forward. Tonight I was hoping to concentrate on the details of the buy-sell agreement, see what's there that we might like to refine, resolve, or accept as they are. But as far as us moving forward, I think that's, as Mike said, we're kind of doing our job. And I think that is our job, particularly since we've been working on it so long, we've been through so much on it. So I would be more in favor of proceeding with this, resolving whatever issues we may have with the language of the buy-sell agreement. As far as put it before the Planning Commission, that is one of the items in here. It would be, and I think that, and I'll explain too, in 2006 when I was on the Planning Commission and we had the buy-sell agreement for Grand Landing, it was a very long, detailed buy-sell agreement that had all the details of where every building was going to go and every road was going to go and all the uses were going to be. And as a Planning Commissioner, I felt that, well, this is a done deal and they're just asking us to rubber stamp it. I don't want that to be the Planning Commission's role. I think the Planning Commission needs to have a legitimate role to apply the ordinance and come up with if there are revisions to it that need to be made, to expect those. And if the developer is not comfortable with that, then maybe this buy-sell agreement fails. I mean, that's entirely possible. And that is written into this agreement that Planning Commission's acceptance or approval is required. It may be that there would be some contingencies or some alterations that could be mutually agreeable, and that's something you work through that process. So I think that the fact that it hasn't gone to Planning Commission yet isn't necessary. It isn't really that. I mean, I think it can happen in the order that's presented here. As long as it's there, I think that it has to happen before you have a closure. This is a buy-sell agreement which allows you to proceed with the next step, which is to go through all of the due diligence, all the proof of how it might work, and gives everybody an opportunity to say, well, this won't work, or it will work, or it'll work well. I think there's a lot to be excited about here. But yeah, the details aren't there yet, nor are they going to be at this point in the process, because the developer is just plainly isn't going to spend the time or money to go through that process without a commitment from the city to actually sell the property to them. And without this agreement, they don't have that. So I think it does make sense that things are in the order that they're listed here. I would like to see us discuss the particulars of the agreement, whether we think that our interest, which is to preserve and reuse the building, that's protected, that we won't get halfway through this process and find out, oh, sorry, that won't work, but we're going to tear it down now and you already sold it to us. We don't want that to be the outcome. We want to make sure that what's described as Exhibit B is attached to this agreement is substantially what gets built. As far as condition of the property, I assume they've already fully inspected it. Any of the deed, the easements, all those things, I think those things are pretty well understood. But I think my concern is that the city's interests are protected, that if we sell the property, that we'll get what we expect to get. We won't get any surprises from either failure of conditions or change of heart or change of practicality on the part of the developer. And then if all else fails, we get the property back. Those are my concerns. As far as whether we move forward tonight, I would move forward if we are satisfied with that, and not if we think that the agreement needs further revision. So that's my feeling on moving forward at this point in time.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we postpone this vote until the Board of Light and Power gets a chance to weigh in on it.
Can I suggest, along those lines, I think we're scheduled for potentially a closed session here in a couple weeks to discuss another matter with our city attorney. We haven't gotten to any of the legalities tonight, so I think our privilege is still preserved concerning this matter. Is that correct, Mr. Bolche?
As far as our discussion tonight, yes. Whether my written opinion is still preserved, I guess that would be up to all of you who have seen it and what you have done with it. If it has gone to any outside party at some point, that could potentially be lost.
Right. Okay. Considering that, if that weren't to be the case, I'd rather, we wait, whatever the council is, whether it's us five or any new members are sworn in on the 8th. We're already meeting on the 15th. I'd like to, obviously, discuss whatever we need to on that matter, but if there's any new members of council, that we discuss this matter as well, so that council is fully aware and in agreement with whatever direction that we want to go. And then, obviously, the new council can also look at this buy-sell agreement that they're going to have to deal with, and then make decisions from there. That would be my motion to postpone.
So if I could summarize, you're suggesting that you would postpone until council could discuss with the attorney whether or not we can move forward as anticipated.
Well, we have a motion though, don't we?
Yeah, Danny's got one on the table,
Well,
right?
he's got a motion to postpone.
Well, he got no second on
That's
it,
not
so
been
that's why-
seconded.
Right, so.
So we're kind of defining what it is we're going to do next. We have a motion for the main motion, but then the motion to postpone has not been seconded yet. It could be modified.
Before we make any more motions and for anything else, talking about the BLP, if I remember correctly, didn't they kind of like, after we said no to them, they kind of like said, you guys go ahead and handle it, if I remember correctly, for us to handle it, and that's what we were doing. We're doing what they told us to do. Just we said, okay, we will handle it, and we did. I don't know why they would feel slighted now. They're the ones that passed the buck on to us. You guys were all here at the same meeting as I was. I mean,
Don't get me wrong, Mike. I'm not saying postpone this necessarily for the BLP's purpose. I'm saying that because of the timing where we're at, because if we were to wait and discuss, we're going to have a new council potentially, and that if that were to occur, now that new council also has to be up to speed on that, and also it'd be in agreement on that.
If the new council is watching what was done for the last, since July, we've had so much public input, we've had so much everything else we've had done, what would it be any difference?
I don't know.
We've been listening to the people, that's why we're going this route we're doing. We asked us to preserve the building and do it. That's what we picked, and we all decided on this a long time ago.
They haven't been
Why are we delaying the whole system? I don't understand this. I agree with Bob on some of the wordings and stuff, like we want to make sure we get what we wanted. We want to make sure that we preserve the building, that we don't end up tearing it down. I think that's the language you need to be worried about now, and move forward with it. I don't understand why you want to go anything else. You're actually here. We need to make sure that we follow what the people wanted us to do. They wanted us to preserve the building as best we can and leave it there. They don't want it destroyed. They don't want it torn down.
I agree with
That's why we didn't go with a couple of them there, and then we also decided that we want to keep it, because the other one was going to change it all. We wanted to make sure that we maintain the historic part of the building. And we've been going down this road for a long time, and it's no difference. They were listening to the people. That's what we're supposed to be here doing, and that's what we're doing. They're telling us this is what they wanted.
I'm not suggesting that we tear the building down or that we go with any other developer or anything else. I'm just saying that this is a significant buy-sell agreement, that we're right before an election, and the next, potentially if there's any new council members, a new council needs to make sure that they're comfortable with such a significant agreement going forward, because that new council's gonna have to deal with, hey, did they meet this contingency? Hey, is there an extension that we're gonna have to offer on an agreement that a prior council might have approved? Again, like I said, if this were back in September like we were hoping for, great, but we're the day before an election. I just don't think that's the right thing to do out of principle. So, but that's one person. So.
Well, I guess my feeling is that we shouldn't base our votes at a council meeting on what might happen at the next election. If we have a job to do, we should be looking at how best to do it.
Well, regardless of what, whether, there's other pieces too that are concerning here that I don't think they can just be fixed tonight, so.
Well, that's a perfectly relevant thing to say.
Right.
I just wanted to get us away from the idea that that we're paralyzed and can't act.
Well, I think it's a combination of factors. It doesn't have to be one or the other.
Well, we have a motion to postpone that's not been seconded. We've had some conversation. And if there's no second for the postponement, then I would suggest we delve into the language of the buy-sell agreement.
Well, my motion very clearly is to postpone until our November 15th meeting, and to also set up a closed session with our city attorney to discuss legalities of moving forward on a buy-sell agreement as well.
Is there a second for that?
So are you,
There's any second for Denny's?
we already have a Denny's motion.
Well, it's not been
Get
seconded.
it seconded, so that's my motion.
Okay, so his motion is gone.
Well, unless somebody wants to second it, right now it's nothing. You need
Well,
a motion and a
that's
second.
what I'm wondering. I mean, if Denny's okay with the suggestions you're making on his motion being added, then would you be a second to that?
I'm not willing to second Denny's motion because I don't think that we should be necessarily taking this back to the BLP. I think it should be the next, if there's a new council or a bunch of new council members, it should be that council's decision after discussing it, no matter with our city attorney and how we should proceed.
Okay.
So we have to have that discussion first before, and I think that's because we're gonna be after tomorrow by that point.
Understand a little better what
That's
you were
why,
getting at.
I would have a hard time supporting just making a blanket statement like that. I don't want to hamstring,
I understand.
the council.
Well, we have two different motions to postpone, and they're quite different, so
Well,
I would
now,
look for a
as
second.
My understanding was that, Mr. Mayor, you indicated that there was no second and we were going to go into the details. So my consideration is that first motion was gone.
yes. I would assume that because no one stepped up and seconded,
Correct.
and Ryan didn't. Ryan has a different idea.
So that's a separate motion. I just want to make sure we're clear on where we are. I do not think we have competing motions.
I don't
I
either,
don't think we had a second for the first motion. I think that motion is gone.
so.
And now if we have a second, and if we have a different motion, let's deal with that.
Question, Mike?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
Well, I'm waiting to hear if anyone wants to follow up on Ryan's.
I'll second Ryan's motion.
Okay, so we have a motion to postpone pending closed session on the 15th with the attorney to discuss the way council may move forward in this process, which would be an opinion which has been shared with council at this point, but is still considered a privileged opinion.
To my knowledge, it has not been shared outside the city, and so therefore, to my knowledge, the privilege has been preserved.
And we would then potentially take action after that closed session.
I think you can have them, yep, both on the same agenda.
Okay, so that would be
2 weeks.
So that would be your motion to postpone, which you seconded.
Denny did.
I'm sorry, Denny seconded. So we're clear about what we're talking about here. Pat?
Yeah, I just want to be clear that we're going to meet to discuss legalities with the city attorney. The questions or concerns you have about the meet, if you could send them to me so we can maybe do additional negotiating with the gentlemen who are patiently sitting on the Zoom meeting.
Yes.
Let them know what those concerns are, and I imagine we can maybe get some of that taken care of between now and the 15th. I also want to add that, back on July 19th, when you guys said, hey, bring us a buy-sell agreement, this is the team we want to go with, that was our charge, and there was just a lot of back and forth. Greg came up with some language. The development team needed to look it over and make their changes to it. It came back to us. Ron got it, made some changes, came back to staff, back to Greg, back to the development team, back again. And meanwhile, we were coming up with costs for all the different due diligence items. There were 16 of them, 16 different items that we're going to have to deal with. And we had to figure out how much each one of those things were going to cost and who would be responsible for those costs. So all of this discussion, we did initially plan to deliver something 30 to 45 days, I think is what we talked about, in mid-July. So we were looking at late August, early September. And each meeting, the guys on the call, and Greg can confirm this, that each time we said, well, okay, let's bring it to council at that first meeting. I think the second meeting in September was our most ambitious shot. That passed us by. We said October 4th. Well, that got by us on October 18th, and that got by us, and we finally got it for November 1st. And this was as recently as last Monday and Tuesday. We were pulling documents together and getting things into the packet so we could present you something coherent on your agenda tonight that we think does protect the city's interests, gets you what you want. There's a significant degree of risk for the city and the private developer here. But you want to preserve that building, and that's a risky prospect. That's why there's so much time involved. The developer is a little anxious about trying to do this in a hurry or commit to doing something that they may not be able to deliver. So it wasn't, and I tried to stay immune to the fact that there is going to be a big decision made tomorrow. The council directed that I bring an agreement. Well, this was the first shot. We tried to hit October, or late September, early October, late October, and then finally got it on this agenda. So we're just trying to keep the momentum going. So there's a lot of good ideas I'm sure you all have about the meat in this thing, and I'd like to hear what that is, because we can get back with the developers and clean that stuff up before the 15th and be perhaps ready to go, maybe not. We'll see who the players are and what they want to do, and maybe some of the BLP board members would also, it's a public document at this point. If they've read it and they've got some concerns or comments to make, I'd really love to hear from them and see what it is, as well as if they've got ideas about we prefer a different developer for whatever reason they don't like this plan, whatever that is. I'd like to hear that, because that can be presented to city council as you make your decision. Be good if you knew what those concerns were.
All right, let's vote on this postponement.
We're voting on the.
Hey, Pat.
Say what?
Nope, somebody's
Hey,
calling.
Pat, this is Kyle with Lakewood. I don't know if I'm allowed to say a few things.
Is that okay, Your Honor?
Yeah, we haven't voted on anything yet. Go ahead.
I can hear you guys pretty well, but I'm catching maybe every few words. So I'm glad my English is pretty strong, right? So I just wanted to add a few comments. It does take some time to go back and forth on the buy-sell agreement. This is a very complicated building. There's a lot of things going on here. And one thing I didn't hear talked about much during this meeting that I just want to let you know that us as the development team and Pat working right alongside, is we're working at updating the phase 1 environmental. That was on the, right on the brink of expiring. So we quickly got on that and got that going again. So that's getting updated on the environmental side. And we're now working into the phase 2, getting that all put together to understand what type of vapor mitigation systems are going to be necessary in this type of building. And then going from there right into the BEA and then potentially the due care plan. So there is a lot on the environmental side. If you look at the original reports, I mean, there was a few hundred pages that we poured through on test pits and tests that have been done on the site from monitoring wells dating back many years that we're trying to make sure we dot I's and cross T's so that we're not getting anybody in trouble through this process. And then alongside that's been the BSA, the buy-sell agreement, and just, you know, this is a unique property. There's some unique things that we're trying to do to it and accommodate a lot of city requests and comments that we've gotten from city council and from Pat and Greg and the team. And there's a lot of time and effort put into that to make sure not just us, the development team, but also that the city is protected as we work through this iterative process. So I appreciate your guys' time, giving me a few minutes to speak, and we look forward to.
Don't fall trap.
Okay, thank you. Mike, you had something else to say?
Nah, you know what? I agree with them. They've been doing their due diligence, and we've asked for this, so I'm still sticking with my guns the way I am.
Okay.
This is ludicrous.
All right, we have a motion that's been seconded to postpone. At this point, if we pass this motion, we'll delay any further discussion until 15th of November. Could you please call the roll?
Dora?
Yes.
Cummins?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Fritz?
No.
Manetza?
No. Okay, we are postponed until 15th of November.
All in their hands.
Okay, next item.
It fell into their hands. Shame on you.
Okay, this is to approve an amendment to the easement agreement to correct public easement rights to property at Grand Landing site as they pertain to parking lots, sanitary sewer, storm drains, water lines, right-of-way, sidewalks, boardwalk, plaza area, and snowmelt system, and authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute the necessary documents. Administration recommends approval.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Motion by Cummins, second by Scott. And incidentally, this was also recommended by the EDCBRA board this afternoon. Okay. Pat, do you want to explain this, or?
I was just letting the attorney know to keep his cell phone on. He needs to be available, but not necessarily present,
Okay,
I hope.
per charter.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, Your Honor, the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority did act on this today. These easements were initially developed to serve the old Grand Landing project that we were working on prior to the bankruptcy. After Red Star Shores acquired the property, they agreed that we would redo all the easements to more match the plan that was approved by the Planning Commission, the plan development, for storm drains, for sanitary, sewer, water lines, all the things you see listed, 9 different things that were provided for in those original easement agreements. Well, the new amended easement gets rid of the plaza area and the snow melt because those things are no longer there. They're not going to happen. But everything else is, and it's all nailed down in this easement document. And when Scott Smith left his private law firm, he was our city attorney, and went to work for the city of Wyoming, the last thing he did, he promised he'd deliver this, so he did. He got these easements drafted, we got them to the developer, and we've been very patiently encouraging them to get them signed and get them back to us so we could nail this down, and we've yet to be successful, and we knew that at some point there would come a day when they had to do something to get this done, and that day is today. They're trying to sell the apartments to an investment company or somebody. We don't know who, but they want to sell it, so they really need to get this nailed down. So they contacted me a few weeks ago, wanted a special meeting, and I said, I think we can wait till November 1st. So we got it all cleaned up and got it put in your packet, and the easement documents are complete. And Mr. Bolche did help us out by inserting some language about taking care of the boardwalk areas by replacing lighting and cutting back brush and replacing the boardwalk when it needs to be done. We wanted to make sure that was very clear in the easement because they've not been very receptive to those requests the last couple of years. So we did insert that language. So it worked out in our benefit a little bit to wait a while. So tonight you're being asked to finalize those easements, and I think this is ripe for the 11 o'clock news for both 17 and 13.
All right. Did want Amy to contribute anything, or is this good enough for now?
Not sure if Amy wanted to comment. The
No, she's got
Brownfield
her
board
thumb up.
voted on it today.
She's happy. Questions and comments by council?
I did read that part of the agreement also maintains the kayak launch and sidewalk areas and 7 parking places in order for people to be able to utilize that asset. So I appreciate that being added in there as well, so that we don't lose out on that too, so. Looks good.
Anyone else?
Fair enough. As discussed, the maintenance and all that is still for the boardwalk and the kayak and all that is still on for the developer, right?
Well, we're gonna, on the kayak launch, that's us.
That's us.
Um,
Boardwalk,
But the boardwalk itself, that is on them, just like any other sidewalk would be in the city, adjacent to the property. So we can do it and assess them if they don't do it when we contact them. So they agreed to that, and that's the way it's written. It would be just like the sidewalk in front of your house.
Yep.
And I imagine with time, we'll probably treat it like the rest of the public boardwalk, which is more a city responsibility. But we do have that ability to ask them to do it and do it ourselves and bill them if they don't take care of it. Because it's, the public is welcome to use it. It's open to the public. I use it frequently. It's a nice walk around there. However, it's used primarily by people who live in that community down there. And I assume that whatever does end up going in on the rest of the property, it will primarily be used by the people that occupy that space and not the general public. But it is open to the public. And I'm glad Mike mentioned the kayak. We could probably do a better job of advertising that that's a public facility. I will put that on my list. We'll get the word out on that.
Well, I've used it lots of times. I think it's a great kayak launch. But it does seem a little strange that it's embedded in a apartment complex.
We'll get some city wayfinding signage to make it clear that that's for you and everybody else.
Alrighty. And the configuration of the property has changed a lot since the original approval back in 2006. So not surprising that you would have to revise a lot of these easements and release some. Any other questions or comments?
No.
Are we ready to vote? Ashley?
Fritz,
Yes.
Dora,
Yes.
Cummins,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Manetza.
Yes. Next item.
This is to approve a budget amendment for major streets, local streets, city sewer, and city water funds for the purpose of developing an asset management plan. Administration recommends approval.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second by, okay, motion by Scott, second by Dora. Amy?
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Amy Bessinger, Finance Director, Treasurer for the city. Tonight I have before you a budget amendment request. So one of the council goals this year is to reprioritize infrastructure needs. DPW Director Derek Gatos has been working with a committee to look at that, and out of that conversation came a request for an asset proposal management plan. That plan is going to take about 3 fiscal years to complete. So this year we're looking at sharing that cost, and the amendment before you is to put in for the fiscal year 21-22 costs. So the cost would be shared amongst major streets, local streets, city water, and city sewer funds. The memo provides to you the current cash balances as of the date of the memo, as well as the information on the budget amendment, which lines we would expense that to, the increase to each of those lines, and then we propose using fund balance, so the fund balance information is provided for each fund listed in there.
Thank you. Derek is in line behind you.
Good evening again, Your Honor, Council. Yes, this is the first step of starting that asset management plan that came out of the Infrastructure Priority Review Committee. The $60,000 is being split 1/3 by each utility for water, sewer, and streets. Of course, we have two street funds, so that their 1/3 will be split in half. Amy's done the due diligence on utilizing our fund balances in these enterprise funds for this fiscal year, and then we'll be budgeting for the next fiscal year come January. This totaling $60,000 to kick this off in January of '22. I'll be back at your December 6th meeting to request approval to execute the engineering contract with Avamarsh to do so for the this current fiscal year. The big cost of this project will come in the next fiscal year, 22-23, totaling about $190,000. Again, we'll split those costs a third. So in the overall scheme of this whole plan is going to cost each of our utilities about $100,000. Streets should be $50,000, and both local and major.
So Derek, if we're paying for this plan in installments, are you expecting progress each year or deliverables each year? Or are we going to wait until we paid for the entire project and they have a plan?
Oh no, there'll be deliverables along the route. It's going to take 3 years to do this. It's a lot of effort to take every asset that we have in the road. Every road section will be then split up, and it'll be numbered. Every water main section will be numbered between each block, hydrants, valves, all of that stuff, all the water services. All that stuff is going to get then values and of how critical are they? What's the age of them? How long do we think they're going to last? All that stuff on all those assets. So I know we got 1,000 valves and 600 water fire hydrants and 5,000 water services and over 60 almost 60 miles of roads. So lane miles. And so yeah, it's going to take time. So along the process, we'll probably have monthly update meetings with Avamarsh as we go through the process. And this plan, actually, we're going to be engaging with Avamarsh. We're going to be doing the legwork out in the field as well. This isn't just we turn the key and let them go. They need the experience, expertise from our crews, our operators, to help. They're just putting it all together and making that asset management plan a readable document, a livable document, and something that we can use as a city and a staff to assess what we do next.
Okay, thank you. Questions?
No, I sat on the committee with Denny, and I'm glad to see that we're going to finally get a plan put in place that puts a value and a need for what needs to be repaired in a priority list, so that we can kind of work through that and put our money where it's most needed. So appreciate it.
I think we needed a long-term plan to do this too, and I think it's a good idea. I think without a plan, without knowledge of where our most critical places are that we should go, I think is a mistake not doing this. So I'm fully supportive of this. I think it's a good idea, and like Mike said, our committee got together and we all agreed on it. It was unanimous. So I think, and I'm glad it was, because I think it's something very important that we need to get done.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that. Yeah, the engineering agreement comes next. That was one of my questions. So these are just the budget amendments. I still am looking forward to seeing that agreement. I still kind of have some little leery about the value of it long term. I trust our staff and the work that you do, and I don't want somebody just to put it together and make it pretty. I want to know that it's going to be a little more than that for the amount of money it's going to cost, because you guys are putting a lot of your time and effort into it. So, but I'll study it some more as it keeps coming and keep an open mind. So.
Well, I guess I'd like to say that it sounds like you're going to start with a basic and thorough inventory, which is something that it's always valuable to have. We've had this rolling project list since, what, 2005, 2006? And we pick away at the things that are most pressing, and we get those done, and then the other end of the list grows, and it will always be that way because everything has an end point, everything wears out. So you planning out there decades in the future. It sounds like it's a gigantic project, and it is, but it's also one that it's a living project. So having a good inventory is certainly going to be helpful. I think we know what a lot of the immediately pressing projects are. We've got those somewhat fleshed out. But for the long term, I like the idea of having a lot of information available so we can pivot and do different projects in different ways. I guess what we're being asked tonight is to the budget amendment, so we know where at least the first installment of money is coming from. And I don't really have a problem with that either. I will comment that sometimes when we talk about the city's budget, we find things like this that come up and we make changes partway through a budget year. Well, sometimes we do, and we have fund balances that cover that.
Yeah.
Gives us some flexibility.
I was glad Amy said we had the fund balances to use from.
That's why she's here tonight
It's
also.
It's
That's
the
why-
opposite, like, we don't, so anyways, yes.
That's why she's smiling behind you.
Yeah. Any other questions? All right, ready to vote? Ashley?
Dora?
Yes.
Cummins?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Fritz?
Yes.
Manetza?
Yes. Next item.
Is to approve the City of Grand Haven Snowmelt Preservation Fund with deposits held at the Grand Haven Area Community Foundation and future disbursements to be applied to the benefit of the snowmelt system. Main Street and administration recommend approval.
Okay, we need a motion.
So moved.
Second?
Motion by Fritz, second by Cummins to establish this fund at the Community Foundation. Let's see, Pat, do you want to explain this or someone else?
Yeah, that would be me. The idea would be, we went from the energy source at the Sims plant to natural gas-fired boilers. That's going to be significantly more costly in the long run. Our projections show, up to maybe 3 times as costly as what we had originally anticipated. Lots of discussion over the last couple of years about how are we going to create a sustainable program that we can have that snowmelt system for the long haul. And it seems that I know a couple of you attended some of those snowmelt committee meetings, and it was always sort of 2 of the entities present saying that the third one should be paying the bill. So it really didn't seem to work out, so we thought, well, let's set up a mechanism so we at least have a long-term idea of how we might create an endowed source that could spin off enough money each year to support the system, whether it's operating or capital costs in the future. Let's start setting that up. And there seemed to be some private interest in helping out to make that happen. We've heard it articulated a few times in the last year. I think you guys have probably heard that. So we thought, let's get that mechanism set up so that we, and let's do it while the momentum's there. We're still talking about it. We're going to be meeting with the BLP. We're going to be having some discussions. And everybody seems to think it's important to keep it. We spent a lot of money on it. So let's create what we've had a lot of success with, which are funds at the foundation that support the nicer things around Grand Haven that maybe we don't have the dollars, kind of the wants, not the needs. So this falls into that category, and I think it was a great idea. So we're getting that set up, and if you agree tonight, we'll get that signed and get it kicked off with an initial small deposit, and then start working on getting funding directed toward that source. And maybe in 10 years, we'll have a fund there that really takes care of that system and makes it something that can last forever.
Okay, any questions?
I'll just say, beyond the natural gas and electricity, like you mentioned, we're finding a lot of obviously operational costs, involved in this. And Derek's done some good research on what are the annual maintenance costs and monthly maintenance costs, and what do you got to do daily, and what kind of staff time does it take. So that's where we're kind of getting closer to that $150,000 number, whereas maybe we weren't always sure what just gas and electric it might get there, but when you add in some of those extra costs, it's pretty significant. So worth a shot. If folks want to help donate, and we can have something that we can pull money from interest rate wise, let's do it.
And those additional operating costs had always been absorbed by the BLP. We never saw them. All of a sudden, we're realizing just how beneficial that was having the LP operating the system.
Fair point.
Yeah, I appreciate the time and effort that the BLP has put into keeping this operational through all the years, and also the effort that they are expending in training some of the DPW guys and getting up to speed with what has to be done to maintain it in an orderly fashion. We all kind of all knew when the generation went away on Harbor Island that we were going to have to find a way to keep this system viable for the residents and businesses downtown. I'm glad to see that staff has come up with some alternatives that we can look at and use. And I know there's been some interest on from some of the manufacturing businesses and stuff as well for looking for some place to donate to be able to help keep this viable. So glad to see it happen.
Anyone else?
I think it's something we need to get done. I agree that we need to get private funds involved in this, because if we don't, I don't think it's going to be able to sustain itself. So I think this is a good idea.
Okay. Yeah. Well,
I have nothing to say.
all right. Well, I think this is it's a good effort. Let's hope that it becomes
Wait for a new council.
helpful. Let's hope it becomes helpful for recovering costs. The operating costs are certainly larger. We talk about a lot about the capital costs that went into rebuilding the system, but over a period of time, those will be much less than the annual operating costs as they accumulate. So, this has become a system which has been beneficial to the public at large. It's become essentially a wintertime walking park for our residents. It's become a popular thing to have. Unfortunately, nobody quite sees where the money's coming from to pay for it, and as Pat said, everybody thinks somebody else should pay for it. So if we get a source, and if we can get this populated with some cash and some money to generate interest, and this would be an endowed fund, so we'd just be looking at siphoning off the interest, that may take some of the sting out of it. So let's hope that that can be helpful. As far as establishing the fund, well, why not? Let's do it. So, if there's no more comments or questions, Ashley, would you call the roll?
Comments?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Fritz?
Yes.
Dora?
Yes.
Manetza?
Yes. Okay, next item, please.
This is to reaffirm the goals of the 2018 Affordable Housing Task Force report.
Okay, I need a motion.
So moved.
Motion by Fritz. Second. Second by Cummins. All right, so this was on our consent agenda. And the simple wording of it was the goals of the Affordable Housing Task Force. The memo that was in our packet, let me get to that point. Was we're asking City Council to reaffirm the recommendations to show continued support for housing options at all price points in Grand Haven. I think that's a part of what this discussion is. So I guess that we had a presentation 2 weeks ago from Rhonda Klein, who's our housing director, talking about this initiative and giving us a little bit of the history and the background and where we're at. It was a status report. And staff would like us to speak our minds as to where we are with this entire effort, so that they know that they're applying their efforts to the will of the council. So at that point, I guess I would open this up to council discussion.
Okay, I'm concerned about reduction of property lines. And also the reduction in the living spaces in houses to make them smaller. I have some great concerns about that. I think the bottom line is I think this is going to be a detriment to Grand Haven. I think it's going to be bad for our neighborhoods. And instead of making our property line smaller, I think we ought to go the other way. Instead of 44 feet, or we basically go from 45 to 44, and I think that was the wrong direction. And I voted for that too. And But then after some discussion we had before and for some properties that we looked at, I think I would rather see our property lines going back to larger than 45 even. So I think that's the wrong direction to go, and I don't like that. And so that's why I brought this, took it off the consent agenda. And I don't think we need to make Grand Haven any more dense than it is, and I think that's going to, again, be a detriment to Grand Haven.
Right. Anything else? Any other comments?
Yeah, I had mentioned that when we had our presentation from Rhonda a couple weeks ago, that sometimes it looks good on paper, but when you actually see how it affects the neighborhoods, it's not such a great idea. And that has come up with a couple of properties that have been up for sale recently and proposed splits. One of them that did occur where they split the property and put some proposed duplexes on it that are going for about 1.2 million each. I don't see how that's affordable. So it sounds like a great plan where we're talking about affordable housing for people, but it's really not affordable. I suppose it works its way up the chain. Somebody buys one of them and gives up a home that's worth $750,000, and someone buys that one, and eventually you get all the way down to the bottom where you have an entry-level home for someone that becomes available. But the time to go through that and the density that it adds to the city is just something that, like I said, it's great to possibly do it, but do you do it at the cost of the people who already live here? They're the ones who are losing out on what Grand Haven is to them, and it's becoming something that is more dense and crowded and something that they maybe don't want. So it can't be at their expense too.
Ryan, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, just a few. It's obviously an ongoing policy document. Our planning commission right now is actually looking at some modifications to the zoning ordinance. There's a public hearing coming up on some changes that would actually address some of Councilman Scott and Councilman Dora's concerns, or at least that's what's on the table. So I think I see this overall as looking at these ideals that are set here, and do we still believe these things? Do we still want to pursue affordable housing initiatives? Does it mean every one of these recommendations or ways to do it are going to be sought? Not necessarily, but when you look at the ideals, and I appreciate Ms. McCaleb's comments, everyone who works in Grand Haven should be able to live in Grand Haven, and I think, yes, if they want to. Nobody wants to force somebody to have to live here but if folks work here, like our city staff do, and teachers do, and police officers do, they should be, able to live here on the wages that they make. And right now, a lot of them can't. So I think that's a perfectly reasonable ideal. Second one, Grand Haven should have a variety of housing options, absolutely, and that's where we have multifamily housing, which is important to our community. We have two-family dwellings, which are important. We have single-family residential, which is important to our community. We have a lot of different neighborhoods that are really unique in character, and so it takes the variety. We have it at all different price points. And then those who live in Grand Haven should be able to remain in Grand Haven as they age if they choose. So absolutely. So to me, these ideals still remain true. Be quite frank, I think, here we're kind of hitting on things that are being worked on, things that have been discussed in a campaign, and maybe we should make sure that, we can affirm it tonight, but, a new council in a couple of weeks, if there's new council members, could choose to go in a different direction. So I'm not sure if we should just hold off on reaffirming this, or if we're just reaffirming these ideals and saying that, yep, this council, this is what we agreed, and then we'll let the next council say what they wish.
Well,
Mike?
yeah, sure. I know you guys, everybody's concerned about being crowded. You don't know what crowded is until you live in my house. My next door neighbors, I can reach out my side window and touch my neighbors. Remember now, this house was built a long time ago. And you talked about density, and people are all worried about it. My house, I can go out my bedroom window, and I can tap on the house next door and tell them to be quiet, and they can hear me. That's dense, I tell you, that's real dense. My property line drops at the back of my house. It's like, in certain areas, Ryan, like you said, the planning commission is looking at different areas. Yes, I agree. In some areas, you don't need that density. Sometimes lots are way too big and they should have 2 homes on them. Sometimes they're not. But the thing is, what do? I'm not worried about density. I'm going to let the planning commission worry about that. They'll take care of fixing it for us. We asked them to take a look at it because sometimes in some of the neighborhoods you don't want to destroy the character of the neighborhood with it. So that's what we're asking them to do. So I'm waiting for them to see what the answer is from them. But maybe we should postpone this, Ryan, like we do everything. We shouldn't have done anything tonight. We could have just waited till the next council comes and we could have just sat back and not do anything and say maybe they want to do it. So whatever everybody wants to do, if they want to postpone this or whatever they want, I don't really care.
You missed the whole point, but that's
Because
okay.
tomorrow's election, you know, you might have somebody new on here and you might have a different opinion.
When you have greater policy implications.
There you go.
Last long term, I think it's
That's what
important to be mindful.
we're here to do a job and do it right and do what it is. But if you want to postpone it, I'm willing to postpone. If you want to make a motion, I'll second it for you. But that's all I'm going to do.
Well, here's what I think. I think that we look at the Affordable Housing Task Force, the document they put in place, which was really quite good. The ideals that they embrace, they're noble, they're worthy of us. These are things that, a direction that's worth going toward. People who work here, that would be our wait staff for our restaurants, our manufacturing workers, our bartenders, all those people who make life so pleasant for the rest of us. In many cases, they're priced out. Would it be good if they could live here? It would be an ideal and something we could work toward. If we can make that happen, then I think that it's a noble goal. A variety of housing options, that should be a fairly obvious thing. And can people age in place here? Yes, they should be able to. They shouldn't feel pressured to either leave their homes, to vacate them for someone else, or because they can't afford them anymore. All these things are noble goals. The conclusions and recommendations that were in this document, they're all fairly sensible. Could there be others? Could they be written differently? Yeah, probably they could, but the point was that the task force was looking for ways to start a process which is bring us down the road to a better place for, not just for us in the comfort that we have and the pride we have in our neighborhoods and our homes, but also for the people who are coming along later who are going to need places to live. You know, we look at housing truly is a critical problem and may not strike all of us with equal weight, but it's there. Our young families are hurt the most. It's hardest for them to have homes, to establish homes for their families, and it's just hard. It's a hard market to enter. Can we control the market? Well, not really. We can't. As Councilman Dora alluded, you know, houses tend to be high priced. We've done a couple of things. We've done the Robinson Landing project, which is going to help a handful of people. We had 8 homes come on the market that were going to be community land trust homes. There were 200 applications for them. It's a start, but it's a drop in the bucket, so it helps, but it's something. But young families are hurt the most. Our workforce housing was cited by our manufacturers as a significant problem for them doing business in our community. We bring a lot of people from out of town to work here. We've been talking about how to handle that with transit. If they could live here closer, if they could make this our home, I think our community would be a richer place. It would be better for a well-rounded community. You know, we have relatively limited parcels available in this town to do larger projects such as Robinson Landing. And so if you're just going to rely on doing big projects with affordable units in them. You're not gonna make a lot of progress, but it'd be something. You know, the zoning was an effort to provide other opportunities throughout neighborhoods, not necessarily to overwhelm them or cram this place full of people, but rather to provide some opportunities dispersed around the community where it made sense to do so. You know, we look at the history of how we got here, you know, the 2018 plan that we're talking about reaffirming, or at least reaffirming in part, or doing something with it tonight, or postponing for someone else to decide. We did a zoning study. We brought in consultants to work with our planning commission for a zoning update. We spent more than a year doing that. Got all kinds of public input, did a lot of tours of the city, lots of ideas bandied about. Some of them made it into the recommendations. The planning commission had hearings and recommendations on September 22nd of last year. They recommended by a 6-to-1 vote a set of zoning updates for us to adopt. And that came to council for a work session here on November 5th of last year. We had work session commentary was taken back to them by Jennifer Howland, our planner. There was some more discussion. We had a public hearing at the city council level, which was actually not even a required public hearing. We wanted to know what the people thought about these, and believe me, we tried very hard to make people understand that this was a far-reaching change that could have a lot of implications. We held an extra public hearing here at the council meeting, in addition to that they had at the planning commission. We did that on November 16th. And we sent it back to the planning commission. They made more recommendations on December 15th. They came back to council again, because we had said, well, some of these things were too much. The multifamily and Southside district and the office service district, too much. Let's not do that. Too big of a step. We wanted to do smaller steps and things that were a little more evolutionary as opposed to revolutionary. So we adopted this on January 4th. Planning Commission adopted by near unanimous vote. We adopted by unanimous vote. And we put it out there, and we started to see how it worked out in reality. And after seeing some of the difficulties and some of the problems, some of the concerns in the public, we adopted a moratorium in July, I believe. I don't have the date for that one written down. We adopted a moratorium, sent it back to Planning Commission, said, let's think about this some more, come back with, maybe we took too big a step, maybe it was too broadly based, maybe we need to look at it more fine detail, maybe we took a little bit of a wrong direction, but let's go back and talk about it. And they're in the process of doing that. They have a public hearing scheduled for later this month to talk about these very things. And they'll send back recommendations, and we'll consider whether or not we want to make a further revision to the zoning ordinance, possibly to address some of the concerns that have come forward. Now, I'd hate to see this council turn our back on housing as an issue and say that we don't want to deal with this, or we can't deal with this, or we can't make this fit our community. I think this is an important issue. I would like to see this council reaffirm the task force recommendations, even if we say that we want to put an exception in there saying that the zoning rules have to respect the historic pattern of development character of our neighborhoods. That would be a perfectly legitimate thing to put as a condition on a reaffirmation. I would like to see council do that. I would hate to see council say, no, this isn't a problem, or we can't address this problem. But I leave it to council to either offer an amendment to this or to vote on it as is, one up or down. But I would like to see council do something with this. We do have a motion on this. I think we need to do something, and just simply postponing everything, I think that we do have a job to do. So that's my spiel. I'll leave it to council to decide where to go with it from here. Pat?
Yeah, I think, at the last meeting when Rhonda made her presentation, we got some good feedback and commentary, and that's what prompted us, let's get this out there. And this council and it may be the same people, it may be different people, but we still call it the next council, may very well endorse continuing working on affordable housing and affordability. But we've recognized that there are some areas we need to be very sensitive about. And that moratorium in July was passed, it was 6 months. So we got till January 19th. And if we don't get some course corrections, and you can expect that. You find some things that, well, maybe we could have done that a little better, and the only application of that 44-foot so far is the one Mr. Dora referred to, where we did get, it just happened to be one house on 2 lots, so that person was able to, with the duplex allowance and the smaller lot size, was able to come up with a plan to put 6 places on there, and that really underscored the issue. People thought, boy, I don't want to see that happen next to my house, but in some parts of town, like Mr. Fritz pointed out, the way we used to build them, we're closer together. The Robinson Landing lots are 45 feet wide. So you'll be able to get a good visual of what that looks like this spring. So as we're working on this, we'll get an idea, well, what would a neighborhood, and we don't have other areas like that. So a very powerful part of your housing affordability plan is working with our neighbors, helping them find ways to create places where people might be able to live. We are hearing every week from our manufacturers they cannot find employees. Their employees can't find places to live, and they can't get good transportation from the areas they do live. And having, and countywide, this isn't just in our part of the county, it's reaching kind of a critical point where some employers may not be able to stick around here because there's just not the workforce that they need to get the job done that they need to get done. So we've got to take this, do what we can. We can't do a whole lot, but we can continually work on it. When after your last meeting, there was a little bit of stress, like, are we going to back off and not keep working on this? I said, we can get this. The Planning Commission is going to put in a lot of time and come up with some good comfort so that we don't lose the quality and character of the neighborhoods that we love so much. Nobody's going to go in and start tearing down homes and building multiple tiny houses on lots. I don't see that being a marketable thing. But all those other things, there's so much in here to work on and so much time that we need to spend on setting up funds at the Community Foundation to help fill gaps when we see these projects coming along, and working with property owners to identify opportunities on vacant parcels that are out there right now. They exist. There's just nobody working on pulling those interests together and finding ways to create good developments that people do support and work for us. Grand Haven's always reinvested in itself, and we'll continue seeing that. So I hope we can reaffirm this, while at the same time we hear the concern that we need to fix our zoning ordinance so that it's not overly permissive, and we might have taken too broad a swing at it the first time through, and right now there's a moratorium. It's frozen. Nothing's happening. You're going to have ample opportunity to fix that, so you can affirm this tonight and say, this is where we're at right now. Now, 2 weeks from now, you might say, let's rejigger it a little bit. Let's come up with an update and redo that. We can do that. So we were just looking for some assurance that, we still want to be making those calls every day. And Rhonda's busy. She's constantly communicating with people, and she is in the thick of it. Mr. Dora expressed a few weeks ago a homelessness situation that he got hit with head on, and it's real. And she's out there working with populations that live here right now. There's available resources out there to help people stay in the homes they're already in, and that can be a full-time job, just finding the resources to replace that furnace or help get that sewer line replaced that is otherwise going to force them out of their home. That's important work that we want to keep doing. So that's kind of what we're looking for, is just affirmation that, yeah, we want to keep working in this area, but we're not going to start, densifying every neighborhood we can because the zoning ordinance change. That's been held up for 6 months right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't think we're gonna stop fixing people's sewer lines, with, this isn't about that. What Rhonda does is, fix sewer lines or fix houses up. Our grant money's still gonna be there for that. All we're talking about is what this document is saying, and I think it's way too broad, and I don't like it.
I'm ready to vote.
Well, we have a motion on the floor. I suggested that we could modify this. If no one wants to do that, that's not my job.
Yeah, I'd like to have that wording once again, Mayor, if you would.
My suggestion?
Mm-hmm.
I would say that we reaffirm the task force recommendations, except that the zoning rules must respect historic patterns of development and the character of individual neighborhoods. that's what I threw out there. You can do what you want with that.
Yeah, I'd like to add that.
Very good. Respect the historic pattern of development in
The character of individual neighborhoods. I mean, it's still broad as opposed to prescriptive. It still leaves room for interpretation, but I think that, like I say, I hate to see us just simply turn our back on all this.
So is that a proposed amendment to the motion that's on the floor?
You'd have to ask Mr. Dora.
Yes. I'd like to propose that.
I'll second it.
Does that help, Pat, as far as staff's efforts?
It really does, yeah.
Well, we would need to vote on amending this. Who made the motion? Dora made the motion.
Motion, I seconded it.
Now let's vote. If there's any discussion on that, any concerns about that?
Will you read that one more time, Bob?
Pat, can you read that back?
What I've got is approve a resolution to reaffirm the goals of the 2018 Affordable Housing Task Force report. And I guess I missed the next immediate part there, Bob.
Except that the zoning rules must respect the historic pattern of development and the character of individual neighborhoods.
Okay. Except that the zoning rules must respect historic pattern of development and the character of individual neighborhoods.
Mike, is that what you moved?
Yes, sir.
Let's vote on this amendment. Ashley?
Dora?
Yes.
Cummins?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Fritz?
Yes.
Manetza?
Yes. So now we have changed this from simply affirming the Affordable Housing Task Force to a somewhat more qualified version of that reaffirmation. Are there any questions on this? Would you call the roll?
Scott?
No.
Fritz?
Yes.
Dora?
Yes.
Cummins?
Yes.
Scott? Manetza?
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. All right, next item.
This is to approve the lead service line replacement contract for the replacement of 23 lead service lines on Fulton Avenue between Albee Street and Beacon Boulevard with Ryerson Brothers Excavating LLC in the not-to-exceed amount of $60,025.10 and authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute the necessary documents.
I need a motion.
So moved.
Motion by Cummins,
Second.
second by Dora. Okay, this was also on our consent agenda. I see Matt Wade has come forward, so.
Yeah, that's correct. Matt Wade, Streets and Utilities Manager, Public Works. This is a project that we're looking for approval for Ryerson Brothers Excavating to come in and install 23 lead service lines on the private side of the property. And this is the same fashion that we did the Fulton Phase 1 project from Albee to Beech Tree. We like to keep the private portion out of the MDOT project. There's a lot of legal and a lot of requirements that go along with the MDOT project, and it goes quite a bit smoother if we can keep it outside of that project. It was brought up before that we currently have spec'd copper lines, and that's true. We haven't really changed our policies yet. Copper was what we put in Fulton Phase 1. Our policies are currently to run copper from the curb stop to the meter. So the DWSRF project, as you guys had mentioned before, is something we're still kind of looking into, maybe proceeding with plastic HDPE lines, something like that for some savings there. But, you know, there's a lot of ins and outs and things that we're still trying to look into as far as figuring out if that's really what's best for the city in the long run. But we did receive 2 bids. Ryerson Brother was under the engineer's estimate of $75,000, so we feel pretty confident with that. Ryerson Brothers has done some work with us in the past, and they're a great company, so we're ready to move forward with them.
Questions for Matt?
Yeah, that was the main thing was on the plastic. There was considerable savings. We asked you quite a while ago to dig into this, and we were hoping to get some kind of information back before we ended up having to do a whole lot more, because the savings itself is very considerable. So it'd be nice if we could get it back to us ASAP. You know, it would be nice.
Yeah.
I understand your policies are now, but we would like to have that policy changed if we can make it more affordable and save us some money in the long run.
I agree.
Has anything been done with regard to that you're aware of?
As far as
looking into the plastic versus copper?
Yeah, I mean, there's some of the biggest things that go into that are tracing the line. You know, once it's plastic, you don't have any way to trace it. So you have to run a tracer wire. And then, you know, what are our policies going to be as far as how we can connect to that tracer wire at the curb stop and at the home? You know, there's some different types of systems you can put in place to do that. You know, those cost money too. There's added costs there. Just the longevity of copper that we know versus plastic is kind of the unknown, and there's a lot of great things to be said about HDPE pipe, and I think it goes a long ways. But I think me, and I know Derek's got a lot of experience with water lines and public works and things like that. But you know, back in the 70s, copper was expensive, so a lot of places wanted to try plastic. It was a different type of plastic back then, but that was a pretty major failure, where all those plastic lines had to get replaced, sometimes within 4 years. So, you know, there's a little hesitancy there when we know copper is tried and true. So,
yeah, it wasn't. The concern was brought up by a fellow who was in the audience, and it was a considerable savings. And you know, if plastic isn't the way to go, I have no issue with sticking with copper. I just we had mentioned to him at the time that we would look into it and come up with an answer one way or the other. So that's basically what I was just kind of looking for. I mean, if the answer is no, we're going to stick with with copper, and here's why, I'm perfectly fine with that. But if there's no reason other than, well, we had to throw a tracer wire in the trench when we bury it up, or before we bury it up, you know, the gas lines do it all the time. I mean, I ran one from my meter back to my garage some years ago, and they're plastic lines. Now it is natural gas, obviously, but I just had to bury a wire laying alongside of it so they could trace it if they ever had to. I think that would be a minor issue compared to the savings and costs that could possibly be achieved and allow us to do so many more homes for, you know, the same amount of money. So, and just looking for a recommendation one way or the other basically is what all I'm looking for.
Yeah, Your Honor, Counsel, yeah, this is on my shoulders, not necessarily Matt's. So Matt's bringing forth this project here. And I've started the memo, we started the research, I haven't buttoned it all up.
Okay.
Significant savings is a term that was used by the gentleman in the audience, and the research I've done so far is probably a couple $100 on a $5,000 water service, and those are all like average prices. So some are longer, some other. So, but they do present some other challenges. Now there are some other, copper's long lasting, but we do sample for copper as well. It's part of the lead and copper, sampling program. So we don't want too much copper in our drinking water either. So is there reasons to switch? Are there costs involved? Are there other complications like Matt was talking about the tracer wire, but this isn't going to be owned by us. This is going to be owned by the property owner. Do they want copper? Do they want plastic? There's all those. Okay, if we do allow it, so just a lot of details that, as you brought it up, and in the savings might not be quite extensive, but either way, I'll detail that all in the memo before the lead service line replacement project goes out to bid. So we have those decisions already instilled in the specifications.
Very good.
Okay?
Perfect.
Okay.
Well, just so I'm clear about one thing, as I recall the history that Matt was alluding to about plastic being put in elsewhere and failing quickly, I believe that was PVC, correct?
It was actually polybutylene.
Okay, and I think what's being proposed is PEX?
Yeah, but there's 12 different kinds of PEX. So there's also, you know, everybody talks about plastic, there's high-density polyethylene as well. So maybe that's a better choice. There might be some that have wires built right in, and they're starting to come out with some new products, or at least market offerings with some alterations. So, but all just logistics on if we're going to move forward and actually do that. We haven't changed our material in decades, you know, probably since the 60s. So, yeah, good stuff.
I remember there was a push at the state level at one point by the plastics industry to push us toward using PVC or whatever the lowest price plastic material was in place of conventional materials that we like to use. And that was another one of those state mandates that they were trying to shove down our throats, saying do this because they'll save money, but also because there was lobbyists in Lansing that were pushing it.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't want us to adopt it for a reason like that.
No, I think it should make sense, you know, but you brought up a good idea.
Okay.
Thanks, Derek. Thanks, Matt.
I would also like to note that the pricing for the proposal in front of us, because we're doing this as part of a reconstruction project, is less than half what you would estimate an individual line replacement would be. $60,000 for 23 installations. We were estimating $5,000 to $6,000 if you were doing it one at a time.
Oh, yeah. So the MDOT or the state process, like Matt was talking about, is so stringent. We need a legal easement on every property, and we have to pay for that easement. So we're doing this outside of that, right? And splitting it up, it costs us a little bit more, but saves us a ton on the administration through MDOT. We're hoping the numbers are coming back a little bit higher than $5,000, you know, like statewide on the west side. The other bid that we got on this was actually from a company that did the Flint Water Services. They're trying to branch out and come over, but they didn't believe, you know, they were really, really high on their prices. We don't think we're going to see that, but we're getting indications that it's not going to be as cheap as we hope it will be. So this might be a little bit more than half. Again, we're only doing the private side of this. The public side will be done with the water main when it's actually replaced. So.
All right, well, I'm just reading the numbers in the proposal. It's where it says $60,000 for 23 replacements.
Yeah, so less than 3,000 a piece.
Say that's not $5,000 to $6,000 each.
No. There's still more to be done.
Okay, that's not a complete price.
Yeah, the MDOT contractor has to stay within the road right of way or any easement that we own. They can't work outside of that without us required to have an easement on hand. Okay. So we're just doing this, and we're going to lay the pipe in. It's going to be done trenchless, and it'll be sitting there waiting for that contractor come next spring to do the water main.
So the contractor, the MDOT contractor will put the service in up to the curb stop, right?
And connect it.
Yep.
And then we will contract with a plumber to make the final connection
Curb stop
inside.
out to the house. Okay, all right, sorry.
Just the way we got to split those things, because yeah, and it was really weird that the MDOT process to require easements. This all comes from the federal requirements, but it doesn't matter if we're putting a water service in or if they're doing grading or a sidewalk extends a little bit onto someone's property, and the real kicker is that you have to pay for that. There's going to be a dollar value based on what that land value is. And so it's like, yeah, even added costs on top of that. I wouldn't imagine it's much, but it's another kick in the pants, so.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. Any other questions?
No.
Are we ready to vote? Ashley?
Fritz?
Yes.
Dora?
Yes.
Cummins?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Manetza?
Yes. Unless I've lost track, I believe that concludes our new business. Brings us to our report by city council. Who would like to go first?
Oh, look down here. I'll go.
Okay.
First of all, I it's gonna be snowing pretty soon, one of these days, and that, we're gonna snow plowing. And we were supposed to be looking at the, parking discussion on the streets, overnight parking, and that, we haven't gotten anything back on that yet. I'd like to see something about that. I think we're discussing the possibility of eliminating it because they don't really plow at the late hours anymore. They're usually, you know, plowing the streets during the day when I'm there, and they're always going around the cars in my neighborhood anyway, so it's the way it is. And also, Pat, you're supposed to be working on an art placement, I think it was, committee of some sort. I've been talking to a few people that are very interested in it. I'd like to move forward on that. We had a discussion on the artwork and that, and I have some people that are very, very interested and said they're willing to work with me. I volunteered to be on that, and I haven't had anything back on that yet, so I'd like to see something. And of course, all the meetings we've gone to and everything else, and Halloween was crazy at the community center. I'm glad I didn't go, but I did see the pictures of all the, and I also sent some of the people that were in my neighborhood, they didn't even know anything about it, and I said, hey, why don't you head on up there? So they did. They hit all the months in my neighborhood, and then they moved over to the community center. Those are the only two things.
Okay, thank you.
And I only got one thing to say, let's get out there and vote, you know, let's jam the polls, see how many people we can get out there and get this election, get a lot of people out there for this election. The more the better. That's all I got, Bob.
Thank you.
Yeah, tomorrow is November 2nd, the general election, which will be deciding who will be our mayor, 2 council members, and 2 directors for the BLP, along with some verbiage and changes to some other things. I'd like to encourage everyone to get out and vote for the candidate of their choosing. It doesn't matter who you vote for as long as you vote. Just remember, when you do not vote, you are letting others make your choices for you. So be in control of your own destiny and get out and vote for whichever candidate you find is the best that suits what you're looking for in a candidate. As the possibility obviously exists that this may be my last meeting. I don't have a crystal ball, so hoping that's not the case, but it very well could be. I'd like to thank this council for having the trust to appoint me to a council member position 2 years ago. I'd also like to thank each of you personally and staff as well for working with me on the important issues that we have faced and could possibly be facing again sometime in the future. So thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Pat, Ashley, the rest of the staff as well. I'd also like to thank our community for placing your trust in me to represent you as a council member. It has truly been an honor and privilege for me to be able to serve our community. So thank you as well. That's all I have.
All right, thank you.
Wait, I do have one more thing.
Go for it.
Yep. There's been an awful lot of talk about the wait going through town to get from one end to across the bridge with the new setup that everybody's suffering through. There's been several people that have reported waiting in line for up to 3 hours to go from Robbins Road to the bridge. I find that a little excessive, perhaps, and I'm not sure what can be done about it, but I don't know if there's a way that, you know, we can change the lights to get people through, you know, a little quicker, or if MDOT can address this somehow, or maybe we need to progress a little further up the ladder. But it seems to me that, you know, a 3-hour wait to go from Robbins Road to the bridge is a pretty excessive time. I mean, you know, a lot can happen in 3 hours. I mean, you could be selling water at one end and keeping busy at the other. So if there's any way that we can improve that, I would certainly like to pursue that. I don't know what it would be, but I know I wouldn't want to be waiting in 3 hours to go that distance.
I don't think any of us would.
Nope.
Thank you. Ryan?
Yeah, one of the, you know, I really never noticed it much before, but on our boards and commissions packets, when I was looking through the the application for the applicants, I noticed there's a box on there that you have to check that you're 21 or older. I didn't know if that's like a charter provision. I didn't see anything when I initially looked, or some kind of ordinance that we passed that said you have to be 21 to serve on one of our boards and commissions. But if it's not a charter provision, I would hope that we could open our boards and commissions up to those who are 18 and older. They can vote at that age, make a lot of other decisions for themselves at that age. I think it makes sense to allow them to, if there's interest, you know, we're trying to get more young people involved. So I'd like to see if we could take a look at that and make some changes on our application if there's no prohibition on those under 21 being, you know, on a board and commission, especially if you can go into the military and go serve and fight. Want to thank our law enforcement for another successful de-escalation this past Sunday. I think it was Sunday morning. I mean, our officers have had a number of them involving pretty significant incidents involving guns that can harm the individual themselves, but our law enforcement officers who are there to protect the community and surrounding community members who are in the area. You know, thank goodness they've been able to de-escalate every one of them. That's because of their professionalism and training and good work. So I really want to commend them publicly for that. Pat, I want to thank you for all your work in educating voters about our ballot proposals that are out there. You know, we're not able to speak in favor or against any of them, but you've done a good job of at least getting the word out there about what's going to be on the ballot. I've seen a number of news media outlets picked up, especially our gender neutrality language for our charter and not using male or female pronouns, which only refers to he right now, and simply saying just. So I appreciate your work on that, and I'll leave it with, yeah, I really encourage folks to get out there and, like Denny said, you know, jam the polls, vote. It's important. You know, there's a lot of folks who, especially on social media, like to give their opinion on things, but, you know, take some time and actually vote. And kudos to everyone, or each of you, for running for re-election, and those running for election for stepping up and jumping into the arena. It's not easy. It's hard to put yourself out there. It can be a pressure cooker sometimes. It's frustrating. I know how nerve-wracking it was for me a couple years ago, and so I give you, each kudos for that. And really, you know, tonight's no exception. We don't always agree. Sometimes, you know, we can disagree passionately, but I truly respect each of you. It's been a pleasure to serve with all of you, and I'm not wishing anybody out by wanting to postpone something. Please hear me when I say that. I really enjoyed and learned a lot from each of you, so thank you.
Thanks, Ryan. And I also appreciate the civility with which this council does its business and our interaction with staff and with the public. I think that we try to set a model for that in this community. You hear about a lot of strife and aggravation and things that don't go well elsewhere, but I think that we do a pretty good job here of listening and respecting one another, and that takes all of us to do that. I enjoyed the Haunted Haven yesterday and stopped out at the airport for the trunk or treat, all well attended. People having lots of fun with that. I agree with everyone else, you know, it's election day tomorrow, get out and vote. It's your job, do your job. I just did want to revisit one thing that happened last week, and that was when the State House of Representatives passed HB 4722, which is short-term rental preemption legislation, which basically takes options away from the local government in order to regulate activity in our community, in this particular case, short-term rentals where they may be within the community. We have embraced short-term rentals as part of our economic landscape here for generations. That doesn't go away, but our ability to, we talked about zoning earlier, our ability to regulate our community, that's something we should preserve, and we should continue to strongly oppose preemption, whether it's this or any other kind of preemption legislation. We need to not drop the ball on that. We need to keep talking about it, keep putting the pressure on our legislature, and hopefully they'll do the right thing. So far it's not been looking that good, but hopefully we can get things turned around. So that's pretty much all I've got. At this point, I would turn it over to the city manager.
Thank you, Your Honor. The one thing, and I apologize up front for this, but I really wanted to bring this to your attention at the soonest possible time, and that is the discussions that we've been having and will continue to have into 2022, I'm sure, about our unfunded accrued liabilities and your pension system, and the issues associated with that are extremely costly and complex. And we continue to work on these in real time every week. We're meeting, talking, looking for ways to resolve this. Our unions have shown some interest in continuing the discussions because in 2021 we've gotten, the new actuarial studies going into next year made it look in some respects much worse than it was last year. So it's not getting any better, and following the MERS pension administrators' recommendations has not always panned out for us. The numbers that they give us one year, that this is what you can expect for the next 18 years, the next year it's drastically worse. It's like, well, last year you told us this was what you thought. Well, we changed our assumptions, so this is what it is now. So you can pay more and buy yourself stability and predictability, or pay less and live with that uncertainty, which is very unsettling, to say the least. So we want to go into this discussion with a current complement of information, and we've gotten some proposals from the MERS administrators about what those actuarial studies would cost. And I've sent you some rather complicated materials on what the different options are, what we might look at, freezing the plan for everybody, and converting everybody to a defined contribution. Now, recognize that we need to negotiate these things and go through a pretty extensive process of doing that, but knowing what the numbers are is a big start. It's hard to go into those discussions and not have exactitude. So freezing is one option. Another option is current employees stay in the defined benefit, new employees go to a defined contribution. And yet a third option would be employees have an option. They could convert if they wish, convert their defined benefit investment that they have with us, convert that over to a defined contribution, lower their biweekly contribution, and get into a defined contribution versus a defined benefit. Sorry it's so late in the meeting to start getting into that heavy detail, but I think most of you pretty much get what I'm talking about. There are these three different options. The fourth option we're calling status quo. Keep riding it out. But those first three, we want to get some numbers attached to those. Well, to do that, we have to pay MERS. It's going to be about $5,200 to have that study done and get that information in here and have it be current for you to use and act on. Now, I spoke with the mayor about it today. There's not a lot of point in doing that unless you intend to go forward and make some changes. So I think there is some such intention. So I want to move forward with those things, but I want to talk to you about it first tonight, report it to you, and just kind of get, in the overall scheme of things, $40 million, $5,200 is not a big investment to wrap your head better around that. Been meeting with Amy. She was able to get out of here. God bless her. She's ready to continue to tackle this, as is Zach. You've got two very keen minds there that are ready and willing to work on this, is whatever it's going to take to bring you solutions that make sense. Now, you've got labor groups that have very different ideas, and you've got different council members that likely have different ideas. We want to take good care of our people, but at the same time, we got to look out for that bottom line. We got to continue to provide a full complement of services that people expect. And to do all three of those things is going to take some real resolve and creativity, and having that information clear and direct, as clear as we can get it from MERS, is probably important. So I think we ought to go forward and get those studies done. And I was ready to say, just do it today, but I thought as long as we had a meeting tonight, I would bring it up and make sure you understood that I was planning on doing that, getting those updated numbers, having that detail probably in 30 to 45 days. We'll know exactly we'll know what MERS tells us those costs are likely to be. But of course, there's a lot of variables there. They guess how many people are going to decide to opt out if we go with that route. Well, we don't know, and we can't accurately measure that until we actually make the option available, and some people take it. I'm thinking few will, because that pension benefit's something that they really appreciate, but they're paying 17% of their wages. And currently, when you add the 3% in, they pay for their health care, or their retirement health care, plus their health care premium sharing, plus their Social Security, plus their other deductions for state and federal taxes, some of our employees are taking home, just north of 40% of their gross earnings. And that's just difficult to recruit and retain quality employees, which is who we want working for us. So just wanted to give you that update. I noticed the mayor was nodding, and I've got 4 others. Thank you, Denny. This is not a formal vote, but call me if you think maybe we ought to hold back and not get all those. I can explain to you which parts of which studies cost how much, but the total bill is going to be $5,200 to get that detail submitted. So thank you. That's all I had for that, and I did want to say thank you to Extra Ashley is what I call her, because she always puts extra effort into everything she does, and that Halloween celebration last night was just out of this world. It was so much fun, and I think we can build on it next year. And my philosophy is for every young person we take off the dark streets of Grand Haven and put them in a clean, dry, safe environment for 45 minutes to an hour, that's reducing the risk of somebody getting hurt by that many kids walking around there. So it was just a lot of fun. Those kids were having a ball. I wish I would have gotten that picture of Bob the Builder throwing a Tootsie Roll in a T-Rex's mouth from 20 feet away. It was very, very impressive. Thank you, Bob.
He didn't have an actual mouth,
I know. His head was down in his chest. But
Yeah, I wasn't throwing at that.
it looked good, though. With that, I have nothing further, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Well, that brings us to our second call to the audience. This is the second opportunity. At this time, members of the audience may address council on any item, whether on the agenda or not. Those addressing council are asked to provide their name and address. Will be limited to 3 minutes of speaking time. Council will hear all comments for future consideration. Will not have a response at this time.
Good evening. Mark Bansick, 810 South Hopkins. When we were talking about the Grand Landing project earlier, my thoughts came to traffic along Jackson and as it turns into Harbor Drive. Not sure if there's been any traffic studies for that, or if there's been anything done yet for beyond the pier master plan, how it might tie into that, or how traffic is going to be effective. As we already know, traffic is slow. I know there was mention in the proposal on the master plan, there might be, requesting angled parking along Harbor, and we knew that was going to slow down traffic in addition, but there was no percentage. I mean, was it going to be 25%, 50%, 100%? There was no percentages or any real detail as to how much traffic was going to be slowed if they went with the angled parking for the master plan on beyond the pier. So that's my concern for both the Grand Landing project. It's tough getting in and out of Grand Haven right now. And that's the northwest part is developed, and there's a lot of traffic there. And now we've got construction. There's always going to be some kind of construction around there. There's also, there might be an accident on that corner. That corner of Beacon and Jackson is a busy place, okay? And obviously with the bridge going up and down, there's going to be more, stoppage and start. And then what if it gets stuck? Okay, so my question is there going to be any traffic studies for Grand Landing and beyond the pier master plan, or is there going to be some consideration as both take place? So that's my question. And I hope we can get some information on that soon. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, well, thank you all for sticking around. We will close our second opportunity for a call to the audience, and if there's no further business before council, I think we're ready to adjourn.
I wanted to put I think Ashley's getting something up on the screen here that I wanted to show to you and the viewing public at home. Almost there.
I'm almost hit this gavel here.
That's it, look at that.
Yeah.
What I love is the little girl down below. If you get a load of this, can you scroll down?
Oh,
look at that.
No, that's not my daughter being embarrassed.
Look at her. Like, oh, he's never gonna make it. I think maybe you hit her in the eye with a piece of candy.
Uh-oh, secret's out.
But that gives you some, that was just probably just a little slice of what was going on down at the community center. That place was packed, so.
It was packed. It was hour and a half nonstop. All right, is that it?
That's it.
Okay, we're adjourned.
Thinking probably 500 kids.